Chapter 868. Hiss. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but gasp. No way, Chu Yang isn't just going to teach the burning sky saint a lesson, he's going to choke him to death. However, their surprise quickly disappeared. What was wrong with that? Who would dare to stop him? The peak masters, elders, and even the Five Elements sect master, if they were to step out to stop him, they would have to consider whether they were powerful enough first. Chu Yang killed elders like he was killing chickens. The Soul Devourer clan was the best example. If they angered Chu Yang, he might even kill everyone in the Five Elements sect. Bang! Just as the burning sky saint was about to be choked to death, everyone suddenly saw a figure streaking across the sky and arriving in an instant. Then, they heard a muffled sound, and then an incomparably dazzling light pierced their eyes. Ah! A huge aftershock rushed out, and the people who were caught off guard were directly swept away. Fortunately, the sudden exchange of blows occurred in mid-air. Otherwise, the people below might have died. After the explosive blow, there was no follow-up. The light dissipated, and the aftershock subsided. In mid-air, Chu Yang was still choking the burning sky saint with one hand. Opposite him was a handsome young man. He stood tall in the void, and his cold eyes were like swords as he stared at Chu Yang. This person's face was extremely pale, so pale that it was a bit sickly. He was handsome, and his clothes were gorgeous. He lived like a prince, and his aura was oppressive. The Five Elements divine child? The people of the Five Elements sect had the same question. This person seemed to be the Five Elements divine child. After all, apart from the Five Elements divine child, no one dared to attack Chu Yang. However, the Five Elements divine child in their impression didn't seem to be like this. Although this person looked very similar to the Five Elements divine child in their impression, his aura was completely different. Especially the kind of whiteness on his face, which they had never seen before. Chu Yang naturally knew about this point. In fact, he knew it better than anyone else. Before leaving the Five Elements sect, the Saint Child had told Chu Yang that there were real and fake Five Elements divine children, and that they were twins. On Emperor Island, after Chu Yang had collected the souls of Slave 1 and the other 2, he had a clearer understanding of this. The person in front of him was the Five Elements divine son, who was also their young master. Bang! Chu Yang directly twisted the burning Heaven Holy Son's neck and threw him to the side as if he was throwing garbage. He sneered and said, "Speaking of which, I should have enmity with your twin brother Jun Wudao." "What, you want to take the blame for your brother? Jun Wudao?" Because the burning sky saint's son had been killed, the coldness in the Five Elements divine child's eyes became even colder. A wisp of black hair seemed to appear on his pale face. However, his voice was still extremely calm, without the slightest bit of anger. It was as if it was very difficult for a person with extremely good manners to be angry. "You'd better watch your tone when talking to me." The people of the Five Elements sect were shocked again. The Five Elements divine child was too arrogant. However, if it was before, they definitely wouldn't have reacted like this. Good reminder. Chu Yang smiled mockingly and said, "You'd better watch your tone when talking to me." Who was more honorable? Who was more arrogant? You want to compete with me in this? Jun Wudao understood Chu Yang's mockery. His pupils couldn't help but shrink. A cold light flashed as he said in a cold voice, "You've obtained the inheritance of Emperor Island?" Tch. Chu Yang sneered in his heart. "You think I'm Xiao Guari, and I'll answer whatever you ask. What do you think? Seems like you've obtained the inheritance of Emperor Island and considered yourself the successor of the great emperor in the Eastern Wilderness. What do you think?" He wanted to confirm whether Chu Yang had obtained the inheritance of Emperor Island or not. However, Jun Wudao didn't get anything. He only got this "what do you think?" Just this sentence alone, what could he tell from it? What could he tell from it? "Since you've been to Emperor Island, then you should know my identity now." Jun Wudao put on a superior attitude again and said majestically, "I'll give you one last chance. Submit to me." There were many meanings in this sentence. Since you know that I'm the successor of the great emperor in the Eastern Wilderness, then you should know that you're nothing in front of me. At the same time, you should know how much power I have in the entire Eastern Wilderness. The Soul Devourer clan and Thousand Demon sect are just the tip of the iceberg. If Chu Yang hadn't taken the souls of Slave 1 and the other 2, he wouldn't have understood the meaning in this sentence. You're the successor of the great emperor in the eastern wilderness. Chu Yang sneered and said, for the sake of the great emperor in the eastern wilderness, I'll give you one last chance. Admit your mistakes honestly, put down your knife, and repent sincerely. The successor of the great emperor in the eastern wilderness. Chapter 869. The descendants of the great emperor of the eastern wilderness had become notorious after news of what had happened on Emperor Island spread to the eastern wilderness. The Soul Devourer clan was controlled by the descendants of the great emperor of the eastern wilderness. The Thousand Demon sect was controlled by the descendants of the great emperor of the eastern wilderness. In other words, the Soul Devourer sect and the Thousand Devil sect had slaughtered millions of people in a frenzy, and it was all done by the descendants of the Eastern Wasteland Great Emperor. Moreover, it was said that this was only the surface, and many shocking things had yet to be revealed. Jun Wudao didn't expect that not only was Chu Yang not afraid of him, but that he would suddenly give him such a heavy blow. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Chu Yang. Could it be that he still doesn't know my secret strength? No. Jun Wudao immediately denied it. He has the Soul Devourer gourd and collected the souls of Slave 1 and the others. He should know a lot, he's clearly looking down on me. Killing intent surged in Jun Wudao's heart, causing the surroundings to turn cold as if winter had arrived. Chu Yang smiled. Jun Wudao, did I poke at your sore spot? You want to kill me? Are you trying to slander me? Hearing Jun Wudao's extremely cold voice, Chu Yang suddenly smiled and looked Jun Wudao up and down. Then, he said, interesting. You don't even recognize your own ancestors. You're really ruthless. After a pause, Chu Yang sighed again. The descendants of the great emperor of the eastern wilderness, what an honorable identity. You used to be proud of it, but now you use it as a disgrace and cover it up in every way possible. If the great emperor of the eastern wilderness knew about this, how complicated would he feel now? Boom. Jun Wudao's body suddenly exploded with a shocking aura. The air in the void surged like waves, and the wind raged. A pair of eyes like a poisonous snake stared at Chu Yang. You're angry, but aren't I speaking the truth? Or rather, you're blaming me for all of this. Chu Yang sneered, paper can't wrap fire. What you did, even if it wasn't because of me, do you think it can be a secret forever? Jun Wudao was like a capricious ocean. Just a moment ago, she was like a tsunami, but all of a sudden, she calmed down. However, her voice was still cold. Chu Yang, you plan to continue slandering me, but have you thought about the consequences? Ha ha. Chu Yang suddenly laughed out loud. Jun Wudao, it's too late. You've already confessed. You're not that weak, but the place I'm poking is really a sore spot for you, so it's normal for you to be angry. Then, he paused, looked at Jun Wudao, and said word by word, Jun Wudao, you lost your manners. Jun Wudao didn't have any fierce reaction. She said indifferently, the innocent knows that they are innocent, and the muddy knows that they are muddy. You don't intend to make a move now, do you? Chu Yang glanced at Jun Wudao coldly, then, get lost. Get lost. Like a clap of thunder, it rumbled and resounded throughout the Five Elements sect, making the whole world quiet. At this moment, the people of the Five Elements sect finally saw Chu Yang's flamboyant, majestic, and arrogant side. When the scene of Chu Na twisting his ear and slapping his head fiercely appeared, they seemed to have a general idea of Chu Yang's character. He was just like them. You want to die early, don't you? Buzz. 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 Suddenly, there was a buzzing sound in the void. There was no wind around Jun Wudao, but her long hair was fluttering in the air. Behind her, there were already 3 divine bridges, one on her body, and the other in the void, connecting her with the whole world. Chapter 870. Spirit Realm 3rd Level. The Five Elements child, Jun Wudao, was already at the 3rd level of the Spirit Realm. Could he be on par with the sect master of the Five Elements sect and the other old monsters in the Eastern Wilderness? This was too shocking. On the other hand, when everyone looked at Chu Yang again, they realized that Chu Yang only had the aura of an ascending soul realm. One was at the third level of the spirit realm, while the other was only at the ascending soul realm. This gap was too big. Disregarding everything else, the soul wheel realm had 9 small realms. It was like 9 heavenly moats. How could the two be compared? However, in the end, the one that shocked the Five Elements sect the most was still Chu Yang. The Five Elements child, Jun Wudao, being at the third level of the spirit realm was shocking. However, Chu Yang, with a mere ascending soul realm cultivation, was able to kill the Soul Devourer clan and the Thousand Demon sect's soul wheel realm elders. It was even more shocking and inconceivable that he had shocked the entire eastern wilderness. They couldn't imagine how Chu Yang had done it. It wasn't hard to understand that a flood dragon had transformed into a true dragon. However, it was inconceivable that a bug had killed a true dragon. In comparison, Jun Wudao was like a transparent crystal without any secrets. On the other hand, Chu Yang was a mystery, a godlike mystery. TSK. Chu Yang's disdain made everyone come back to their senses. Jun Wudao, you can make your move now. Chu Yang hooked his finger at Jun Wudao. Let me show you what fear is. Jun Wudao's sickly pale face flickered between light and dark, the light in her eyes flickered between anger and shock. Could it be that this bastard has sensed something? Provoking me again and again, humiliating me. At this point, if I don't take action, my prestige will fall to the ground, and my face will be loss. His heart was unsettled. He gritted his teeth and shouted in his heart, "Control, I must control myself. This despicable schemer is very good. He has taken the souls of Slave One and the others, so he might have already smelled something. If I fall for his scheme, it might cause a series of reactions." At that time, Jun Wudao quickly restrained herself and said in a cold voice, "Chu Yang, it's not a problem if you want to have a life and death battle with me, but don't speak empty words to me. Have you asked your 2 masters?" The 2 masters that Chu Yang referred to were naturally the Supreme Elder and the Golden Elder. Jun Wudao's words made sense. If the 2 of them had a life and death battle, the Great Elder and the Golden Elder would intervene at the last moment. What you said makes a lot of sense. Chu Yang was a little surprised. Jun Wudao was too good at enduring. At that moment, he sneered again, "Don't you want to go back and ask your father? My dear father, can I fight with others?" Haha. His words were too sarcastic. Many of the people of the Five Elements sect could not help but burst into laughter, making Jun Wudao's pale face instantly turn red. "I won't waste my breath on you. After you get the permission of your 2 masters, come and find me. I will tell you how to write the word death." Jun Wudao was almost burned to death by his own anger. He could not stay there for a moment, so he left immediately and disappeared in an instant. But very quickly, a loud boom was heard from the Five Elements Divine Child's hall. The people of the Five Elements sect looked in that direction and saw smoke and dust rising into the sky. They could not help but laugh. The Five Elements Divine Child must have been so angry that his lungs were about to explode, but he forced himself to hold it in. He was obviously very afraid of Chu Yang. Or perhaps, he was afraid of Chu Yang. Chapter 871. I think the Five Elements Divine Child must be afraid of Senior Brother Chu. That goes without saying. How famous is Senior Brother Chu? Moreover, he earned his fame through killing, unlike the Five Elements Divine Child who only knows how to be arrogant. You didn't see the Five Elements Divine Child's expression just now. It was as if he had eaten a pile of shit, but he was still holding on. He's overestimating himself. Senior Brother Chu is no longer someone he can handle, and he still dares to put on airs. When a wall is down, everyone kicks it. When a drum is broken, everyone beats it. The world was always like this. Chu Yang didn't care, but he felt that the Five Elements Divine Child, Jun Wudao's reaction was a bit strange. At Jun Wudao's age, she was able to endure his sarcasm. It was really unusual for her to be able to endure it. Her mentality was certainly not bad. Could it be that he's really afraid of me? Chu Yang thought to himself, it's possible, but the probability isn't too high. He has the ability to challenge me with his Spirit Realm Level 3 cultivation. After all, this isn't Emperor Island, and his realm can't be suppressed. Then this is strange. Chu Yang did know a lot, but unfortunately, Slave 1 and the other two only knew bits and pieces. After all, their focus was on Emperor Island. The Soul Devourer clan and the Thousand Demon sect are part of their plan. Originally, they wanted to throw these two out to win fame and reputation, but I've already ruined it. In addition, the matter of Emperor Island has been confirmed, so they should have a new plan. Chu Yang frowned. If the Soul Devourer clan and the Thousand Demon sect could be controlled by the descendants of the Eastern Wilderness's great emperor, then the Five Elements sect, the Longhu sect, and the Seven Stars sect could also be controlled by them. At the very least, they must have been heavily infiltrated. The traces of the Five Elements sect being infiltrated were very obvious. The core formation was almost controlled by the Soul Devourer clan. Chu Yang could imagine that the Seven Stars sect and the Longhu sect were probably the same. He even suspected that the descendants of the Eastern Wilderness's great emperor had already controlled the Longhu sect. This was because the Longhu sect and the Soul Devourer clan had a history together. Wei, Wu, Qi, and Daihan. What about these four countries? But have they been infiltrated or controlled by the descendants of the great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness? Suddenly, Chu Yang shuddered. The descendants of the Eastern Wilderness's great emperor. Such a glorious identity has become a disgrace. Then, the descendants of the Eastern Wilderness's great emperor can only abandon or create a new great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness. Only then can they restore their past glory. Today, the Five Elements divine child, Jun Wudao, was cutting off his identity as the descendant of the great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness. Gradually, Chu Yang felt that the fog in front of him was dispelled completely, and he could see clearly in front of him. The descendants of the great emperor of the Eastern Wasteland may be planning to unify the Eastern Wasteland again. If that was the case, the descendants of the great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness would be making a big move. I'm afraid I've already been targeted by them. I need to be prepared. Although Chu Yang had something on his mind, he still smiled. After the people of the Five Elements sect left, he, the Zither Melody Saint, and the others partied to their heart's content. During this time, Chu Na had secretly asked Chu Yang if he was confident. His answer had been very relaxed. That night, after having a good time, Chu Yang left the Five Elements sect and headed to Emperor Island to find the Guardian there. The next day, he returned to the Five Elements sect and entered the Huanmo Mystic Zone without anyone knowing. When Chu Yang came to the Huanmo Mystic Zone again, he couldn't help but recall the time when he had participated in the entrance examination. And Deity had sent people to kill him, and Xiaopi had chased after him. Everything that had happened that day was a little blurry. Chu Yang had come here again because of the mysterious person he had met in the Huanmo Mystic Zone. At that time, the mysterious person had given him the pentagram anti-heaven star for no reason. Chapter 872. Chu Yang released his spiritual power without limit. He tried to find the mysterious man, but to no avail. The Huanmo secret territory was not small. Although Chu Yang's spiritual power was strong, it was still extremely difficult for him to find the mysterious man. Especially if the mysterious man was deliberately hiding. The result was more or less the same. However, as soon as he gave up, a voice sounded in his mind. "Little friend, I didn't expect you to improve so quickly. Now you're already famous in the Eastern Wilderness. Looks like I didn't misjudge you that day." Along with this voice, the mysterious man appeared in Chu Yang's spiritual perception. Then, he appeared in front of Chu Yang. He was elegant and calm. It was the kind of calmness that came from going through hardships and life and death. "Senior, I have something to ask," Chu Yang said respectfully. "Ask. Now you're qualified to ask and know." The mysterious man's voice was very gentle. He looked at Chu Yang with more admiration and fondness. Chu Yang could clearly sense that the mysterious man had no ill intentions toward him. He was even more respectful. "Senior, who are you? Are you a senior in the sect?" The mysterious man smiled and said, "You noticed the abnormality of the Five Elements sect when you first entered. I'm far inferior to you in this aspect." After a pause, he said again, "As for now, I'm afraid you already know what you need to know. I don't need to say more." Chu Yang smiled bitterly. "Senior, You think too highly of me. If I knew, I wouldn't have come looking for you. Senior, please tell me your identity. The mysterious man pointed at the pentagram anti-heaven star in Chu Yang's body. Whether it's the pentagram anti-heaven star or the 5 elements heaven circulating ring, only the sect master of the 5 elements sect can wield these 2 items. Who do you think I am? Chu Yang's eyes narrowed. Senior, you guessed right. I'm the former sect master of the 5 elements sect. The mysterious man smiled bitterly. As for why I'm like this, I don't think I need to tell you the reason. Chu Yang nodded. If the mysterious man was the former sect master of the 5 elements sect, then all his guesses were confirmed. Senior, how many people in the sect know the specifics? Chu Yang said, the descendants of the great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness have a bad reputation now. I have a premonition that they will make a big move. Both of your masters know. The mysterious man teased Chu Yang. Chu Yang had never seen these 2 masters before. If it wasn't for them hiding in the dark, I'm afraid I would have been discovered long ago. Chu Yang immediately frowned. He could hear the seriousness of the matter. The sect leader, the Grand Elder, and the Golden Elder were the 3 big shots of the 5 elements sect. Since they knew about this, why didn't they set things right? It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he probably couldn't do it. Is the current 5 elements sect master's cultivation very terrifying? Yes, very terrifying. The smile on the mysterious man's face had already disappeared. He used to be my disciple. I was already no match for him a long time ago. A conservative estimate is that he's at least at the 3rd level of the soul fusion realm. Soul fusion realm cultivation. Chu Yang's eyes widened. The soul fusion realm was also known as the 2nd ascension realm, or the heaven realm. When the spirit and martial soul merged, not only would the martial soul improve, but it would also step into the heaven realm. There were 9 grades of the martial soul and 9 grades of the heaven realm. In the Eastern Wilderness, the soul fusion realm could be said to be an invincible existence. It was not impossible to unify the Eastern Wilderness. The most terrible thing is that he has the Eastern Wilderness Great Emperor's Jade Seal. Chu Yang was no stranger to the Eastern Wilderness Great Emperor's Jade Seal. He had heard about it when he was on Emperor Island. Now we can only rely on you. Chu Yang almost knelt down when he heard this. He had just completed the 9 transformations of the Ascension realm. How could he be a match for a soul fusion realm? Suddenly, he understood what the former sect leader of the 5 element sect meant. Emperor's Island. Chapter 873. Rely on me. Chu Yang smiled bitterly in the end. Senior, then there's no hope. In Emperor Island, the descendants of the Eastern Wilderness Great Emperor have all moved away. If they can't pry it open, I can't pry it open either. The Eastern Wilderness Pagoda is a saint artifact. I can't even activate it. The former 5 elements sect master didn't seem surprised at all. Then you don't have to worry about it. I'll deal with that traitor. You do what you need to do. Chu Yang was delighted to hear this. Even if the sky fell, someone would shoulder it. He couldn't help but smile. Senior, you're not an incompetent person. I'm an incompetent person. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in such a sorry state because of these rats. The former 5 elements sect master sneered. Now that I've become a rat, let's see if they're incompetent. The reason why the descendants of the Great Eastern Wasteland Emperor were able to succeed time and time again was largely because they were in the dark, catching people off guard. Now, the former sect leader of the 5 elements sect wanted to give them a taste of their own medicine. Chu Yang understood what he meant. Next, many shocking things will happen. It'll be very interesting. I'm very curious to see how you'll react. As he spoke, he had already left. Although his figure had disappeared, his voice still floated in Chu Yang's ears. I have elders and brothers and sisters to take care of. I don't think this is interesting at all. Chu Yang smiled bitterly as he watched him leave. If he were to fail this time, his entire family would most likely suffer a calamity. The 3rd level of the soul amalgamation realm was a natural chasm. It was like a demonic mountain pressing down on his heart. Chu Yang felt that his entire body was extremely heavy. It was as if he couldn't take a step forward. He went through everything in his mind. He had no way to deal with a soul amalgamation realm expert. A grade 5 array master wouldn't do. At most, he could only deal with a soul amalgamation realm expert. Origin Martial 3rd Revolution, Chi Soul 3rd Revolution, Divine Soul 3rd Revolution, and 1800 Dragon Power. This wasn't enough. The Path to Heaven, Reincarnation Divine Ability, and other divine abilities wouldn't do either. As for the 5 Elements sect's Mountain Protection Formation, if he could master it, he would have no problem dealing with a soul amalgamation realm expert. However, the other party was the sect master of the 5 Elements sect, the true controller of the Mountain Protection Formation. Although Chu Yang had partial control over the 5 Element sect's protective formation, it was impossible for him to control it completely. Not letting the other party drive the formation was already pretty good. Of course, he could also place his hopes on the former sect leader of the 5 Element sect. However, that would be too passive. The only one you can rely on is yourself. Although this sentence was pessimistic and negative, Chu Yang always followed this sentence. I hope the divine devil martial spirit can give me some confidence. Chu Yang did not leave the illusory demon secret realm. Instead, he stayed inside and pondered over the divine devil martial spirit. This way, no one would know even if he made a big commotion. In the heavenly soul world, the martial spirit was the starting point of a martial artist. It was the most important fulcrum. Cultivation started from understanding one's martial spirit. The more one understood one's martial spirit, the faster one's martial arts progress. Chu Yang's 2 martial spirits had changed into a different state. Of course, he had to start from the beginning to understand them. In fact, he didn't even need to ponder over it. He could just use his divine devil martial spirit to deduce it. However, he always felt that if he did that, he would lack his own understanding and it wouldn't be perfect. Therefore, just like when he was a student, he tried to solve the problem. After he got his own answer, he would look at the answer. God, he believed that it was the purest, kindest, most righteous, and most holy. It was immortal and indestructible. It meant light, hope, and redemption. It was omnipotent. It was the gathering of all beautiful existences. It was one of the strongest points. Chapter 874. One God and one demon, like yin and yang, like father and mother, heaven and earth, the two could be transformed. The eternal hell was where fallen gods were imprisoned and refined. The eternal heaven could also be corrupted, infiltrated, and even occupied by demons. The gods and demons could also be 2 incomparably powerful races, the god race and the demon race. It could also be a kind of religion, a kind of belief, or a kind of symbol. For example, Chu Yang believed that the devil was a symbol of freedom. The divine spirit and the devil spirit were just 2 words, but they carried too many meanings. After Chu Yang had his own answer, his consciousness moved, and when he was about to touch the 2 martial spirits, his soul was immediately divided into 2 parts by the divine spirit and the devil spirit. Instantly, in his consciousness, a world of light and a world of darkness, like yin and yang, like heaven and earth, appeared, and there was a supreme figure in each of them. The 2 were like yin and yang. The first thing that was touched by Chu Yang's body was not the god or demon, but the talent that he had obtained from devouring the desolate demon prince and the sea god's son. The secret energy in his body circulated, and spiritual energy surged out, forming a giant blackbird behind him. Whether this giant blackbird was the real Kuan Peng or not, Chu Yang did not have an answer before, but under the influence of the god and demon, he felt that it could be. Kuan Peng, the Kuan was the yin, and the Peng was the yang. The combination of the yin and yang was the Kuan Peng. After that, in his hands, the left hand was dark, and the right hand was light. One of them would show the dark demonic blade, and the other would show the divine sword of light. The wings of light against the wings of darkness, the divine spear of light against the spear of darkness, the armor of light against the armor of darkness. Light and darkness were new abilities in addition to the original abilities of the god and demon martial spirits. Light was only one of the god's abilities, and darkness was also only one of the demon's abilities. It could not replace both. As the god and demon martial spirits improved, Chu Yang would be able to obtain more abilities. Chu Yang's Destiny Twins martial spirits were not in the Tianhun world's martial spirit system. Chu Yang had long realized that after reaching the 9th stage of the ascending soul realm, his two martial spirits would continue to improve. Wings of Darkness. Peng. Chu Yang began to test out these new abilities. With a thought, a pair of large wings appeared on his back. This pair of wings was pitch black and deep, like the darkest and deepest darkness in the world. On the dark wings, the figures of many demon gods appeared, and when they spread out, the aura of demons immediately rushed towards them. With the wings of darkness as the center, everything within a radius of 30 meters was shrouded in a pitch-black demonic mist. It was as if this pair of wings had brought the darkness of hell to the mortal world. Chu Yang tried to fuse the heavenly rock's feathers into the wings, but they were all repelled by the wings of darkness. It was as if the heavenly rock's feathers were not qualified to be associated with the wings. Hiss! Chu Yang couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. When the heavenly rock's feathers formed the heavenly rock's wings, its speed was not inferior to his path to heaven. As for the rank of the heavenly rock's feathers, he was still unclear. However, he was certain that it was definitely not inferior to a spirit stage artifact. However, the feathers left behind by a powerful gold rock bird from the big-winged gold rock bird were repelled by the wings of darkness. Could it be that the wings of darkness were this powerful? As the wings of darkness gently flapped, demonic aura surged. With a swoosh, Chu Yang was sent flying for an unknown distance. However, he could feel that the muscles on his body were about to be torn apart. Armor of Darkness. Chu Yang immediately used his devil martial spirit. Suddenly, with him as the center, a hellish whirlpool appeared. Under the high-speed whirlpool, a ferocious armor appeared and fell on the main parts of his body, forming an egg-shaped black light cover. It was airtight and not even a drop of water could enter. With this level of protection, the feeling of his muscles being torn apart instantly disappeared. When the attacks landed on the armor, not only were they dissolved, the whirlpool even appeared and devoured them. Hiss! Chu Yang couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Who would be able to break through such an armor? It was simply the strongest protection. Under his careful observation, the protection formed by the 9-dragon bell, a soul wheel stage artifact, was as weak as paper in front of the armor of darkness. It was too shocking. It was far beyond his imagination. Chapter 875. Chu Yang felt that his body was exuding a hellish aura, and his spirit was incomparably excited. Regardless of whether it was the wings of darkness or the armor of darkness, it was not something that could be casually condensed. Under the control of the devil martial spirit, the spirit chi in the body was transformed into devil chi. After going through various complicated circulation routes, the devil chi was emitted from the body's acupuncture points and finally condensed. Without the devil martial spirit, even if it was condensed, it would have no power at all. Dark Devil Saber. After feeling the terrifying speed and defense brought by the devil martial spirit, Chu Yang began to feel the terrifying attack power of the devil martial spirit. Buzz! With a buzzing sound, a black devil saber appeared in Chu Yang's hand. It was burning with raging black flames. It seemed to be the flames of the devil god's wrath. It contained the will to burn and destroy everything. Saber martial spirit. Chu Yang's mind moved, and the saber martial spirit fell into the hands of the devil martial spirit. In an instant, as if the devil god had broken out of the seal and was once again in control of his weapon, the dark devil saber actually emitted a sharp and incomparably fierce sound, as if it was the singing of the devil, but also the decadent sound of hell. Swish! Chu Yang brandished the dark devil saber in his hand, which was brimming with murderous aura. Suddenly, an incomparable secret power of annihilation swept out. It was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were chopping down. The void suddenly turned scarlet red. It seemed as if blood was floating in the air. It had completely dyed the world red. In the void, there was a dark devil light flashing, as if the void had been cut open, showing a space crack. The power was amazing, but there was no visual impact, as if nothing had happened when the saber was waved. Dark Flying Saber. The dark devil saber in Chu Yang's hand shrunk into a flying saber, and an even more intense hellish aura filled the air, and a drop of blood hung on the tip of the saber, as if it was a hellish whirlpool, or hell, and if one looked up, one's soul would be sucked into hell. Dark flying saber, go. Rumble. The spirit chi in Chu Yang's body was boiling, and the billowing devil chi surged out. His whole person was like the incarnation of the devil god of hell. The flying saber flying technique was no longer the previous meteor flying saber technique, but the devil god of hell's body, throwing the flying saber. This was the dark flying saber, the flying saber of hell. Whoosh, the dark flying dagger tore through the sky and flew a few hundred meters before entering the mountain. The mountain was pierced through like a piece of paper, unable to stop the dark flying dagger. Although the flying dagger was small, after piercing through the mountain, it directly opened up a huge tunnel. The pitch-black hole even let out howling sounds at this time, as if there was a big howling abyss inside. Such power. With the speed and power of my throwing knife, I can instantly kill a spirit stage cultivator. There is no doubt about it. Chu Yang looked at the mountain again. Other than the pitch-black tunnel opened by the flying dagger, the surrounding mountain was also corroded by the devil chi on the flying dagger. It was full of holes. Such a scene made him even more certain of his judgment. It was just a mere flying dagger. The surface of contact was so small, but the area it covered was so huge. Needless to say, its lethality was even more shocking. It was as if a bullet had opened up a tunnel. Perhaps, with my assassination techniques, coupled with the Dark Devil Blade or the Divine Sword of Light, I can also assassinate a Soul Fusion Realm expert. This thought appeared in Chu Yang's mind: assassinate the sect master of the Five Elements sect. This idea was a bit crazy. If others knew that a mere ascending soul stage wanted to assassinate a Soul Fusion Realm expert, they would definitely laugh their heads off. However, if Chu Yang's attack landed on the sect master, he could rely on the Divine Sword of Light or the Dark Devil Blade formed by his Divine Demon Martial Soul. Even if he couldn't kill the sect master, he would definitely be able to heavily injure the sect master. Chapter 876. Judging from the current situation, Chu Yang was confident. Whether it was the dark demonic blade or the dark flying dagger formed by the devil martial spirit, they were all extraordinary. Not only would they kill the body, but they would also injure the soul. The cries of hell, the cries of thousands of demons and devils, under the impact, the mind would definitely be in great chaos, and even the soul would be destroyed. It was a double attack on the mind and the body. Chu Yang temporarily suppressed the thought of assassination and used the God Martial Spirit to form the Wings of Light, the Armor of Light, the Divine Sword of Light, the Flying Dagger of Light, etc., confirming that the power was equivalent to the Devil Martial Spirit. However, after the idea of assassination was born, it could not be suppressed. If there is no other choice, I will carry out the assassination. Chu Yang finally made a decision. This way, he could not reveal the power of the divine demon martial spirit. Kuan Peng. He continuously integrated the talent he obtained from devouring the desolate demon prince and the sea god's son's monster cause. For a moment, the void behind him seemed to have turned into the North Sea. Chi waves surged like waves, and the sound of worship was incessant. In the middle, a Kuan fish seemed to be trying to transform into a Kuan Peng. Shoo shoo shoo. The desolate demon prince's desolate demon bow naturally fell into Chu Yang's hands. He was also trying to use the god's arrow and the devil's arrow. The wings of darkness and wings of light condensed from the divine demon martial spirit couldn't be casually used. Aside from the assassination, if someone saw through the use of such martial arts, it was very likely that a great disaster would befall the martial artist. If he encountered a tricky situation, the desolate demon prince and the sea god's son's methods should be enough to deal with it. The desolate demon prince and the sea god's son's talent and martial arts were definitely the top in the entire eastern wilderness. Chu Yang practiced these in the Huanmo boundary for 3 days. After he was extremely familiar with them, he left and returned to the Five Elements sect. In the courtyard, Cao Ju had been waiting for him for a long time. He had been coming for the past 3 days. Bastard Chu, you have completely underestimated people. Cao Ju said in a low voice. The sect leader has already passed down the words, no one can break the rules of the ancestors. Everything must be done according to the rules, even you. If you want to challenge the Five Elements divine child, You must first have the qualifications to become a divine child. Therefore, you need to go through many tests, pass the tests of the disciples of the Five Elements sect, and gain their recognition. After a pause, he continued, in other words, if you want to fight the Five Elements divine child, not only do you have to participate in the true disciple competition, but you also have to participate in the saint selection. In the end, you have to obtain the qualifications to become a deity before you can fight the Five Elements divine child and settle your grudge. According to the rules? Chu Yang's voice turned cold. Yes. Cao Ju nodded. That's what it means on the surface. In other words, my bet with the Five-Element divine child has been taken as bullshit. Chu Yang narrowed his eyes. The so-called rules were bullshit. In his previous life, those with good grades were guaranteed admission. If battle results were grades, with his current results, he would have been guaranteed admission, but he didn't even have the qualifications to do so. And in this world, could it be that the system was more perfect than the one in his previous life? Was that possible? Looks like they're scared, Cao Ju said. That's why they've done everything possible to prevent you from fighting with Jun Wudao. They've set up many obstacles. A few days ago, with Jun Wudao's attitude, do you think that's possible? Chu Yang sneered. These rats are just trying to achieve some unspeakable goal, such as finding out my background. If that's the case, whether it's the true disciple competition or the saint selection, wouldn't it be interesting? Chapter 877. The sun rose from the east, signaling the beginning of a new day. Today, the Five Elements sect woke up earlier than usual. When the sun rose from the horizon, the entire Five Elements sect was already in an uproar. Did you hear? Yesterday, Senior Brother Chu said that the Five Elements divine child is just a coward and not worthy of being his opponent. I think the Five Elements divine child is scared, so he can only be a coward. Isn't that so? Senior Brother Chu is so ferocious. He has already destroyed the entire eastern wilderness. The Five Elements divine child made a wise choice. Losing face is better than losing life. Of course, there were those who supported and admired Chu Yang, and those who supported the Five Elements divine child. Naturally, there were also voices of opposition. Are you kidding? The Five Elements divine child has a shocking cultivation of spirit realm level 3. He can already stand shoulder to shoulder with the Judiciary Elder and Supreme Elder. That's right. The Five Elements divine child has no reason to be afraid of Chu Yang. Chu Yang is indeed not qualified to challenge the divine child now. Senior Brother Chu is not qualified to challenge the divine child. Someone retorted, "Hehe, I don't think so either. But I don't know why the Five Elements divine child obeyed when Senior Brother Chu told him to scram that day. I'm really curious about the reason." I'm curious too. The Five Elements divine child was fuming that day. Someone else mocked, "What's the reason behind this? Wasn't he about to explode from anger?" I think he wasn't about to explode from anger. He was probably overjoyed. What do you know? The divine child is cultivating the enduring divine art. He's about to succeed. How can he break it? Don't you think so? Haha. Those who supported Chu Yang mocked and ridiculed. They were so angry that those who supported the Five Elements divine child started to beat them up. The two sides started to fight, and it was very intense. However, the disciples of the Five Elements sect discussed even more enthusiastically. I heard that this is the sect master's intention. He said that Senior Brother Chu is not qualified to challenge the divine child. If Senior Brother Chu wants to challenge the Five Elements divine child, he has to follow the rules. He has to become a true disciple first, and then a saint. Only then will he be qualified to challenge the divine child. What a joke. In an instant, after many people heard this, they all felt that this was extremely inconceivable, and they all began to mock him. Is the sect leader a fool? Senior Brother Chu, what difference is there between killing the burning heaven saint sun and slaughtering a chicken or a dog? Such a character is actually participating in the true disciple competition. Isn't this deliberately humiliating Senior Brother Chu? He's definitely trying to embarrass Senior Martial Brother Chu, but who has the ability to embarrass Senior Martial Brother Chu? In the true disciple competition, Who can be senior apprentice brother Chu's opponent, and who dares to go up and be senior apprentice brother Chu's opponent? This was especially true for the five-element sect's disciples who were participating in the true disciple competition this time. They were the most dissatisfied. This is not only humiliating senior brother Chu, but also tormenting us. Once senior brother Chu goes up, all the attention will be on him. How will we have the chance to get the attention of the elders? You're right. There's no need for that at all. Senior brother Chu doesn't need to be directly conferred the title of divine child, but is definitely more than qualified to become a saint. This is the difference between being raised by a biological mother and being raised by a stepmother. Discussions were rampant, and the entire five-element sect could be seen whispering to each other. Among them, there were some who knew more, and were even more worried. If the five elements divine child was the descendant of the great emperor of the eastern wilderness, then what about the sect master who was originally suspected by Chu Yang to be a spy of the Soul Devourer clan? If both were true, then it was simply a great terror. On this basis, the disciples of the five-element sect seemed to have somewhat understood the order of the sect master of the five-element sect. Using the rules as an excuse to ask Chu Yang to participate in the true disciple competition, they were afraid that it was not that simple. There was definitely some kind of trick involved. As for what kind of trick it was, there was no way to know. Chapter 878. After that, the people of the five-element sect were shocked by even more shocking news. Emperor Wei of the Wei nation was assassinated by an unknown person last night. Emperor Wu of the Wu nation went missing for no reason. No one knows if he's dead or alive. Emperor Han of the Korean nation was poisoned and is currently unconscious. After that, Emperor Qi died, the sect master of the Seven Stars sect died, and the sect master of the Longhu sect was ambushed by an unknown person. The sect master died, and many elders suffered heavy casualties. These news that could shake the eastern wilderness continued to spread. For a time, the entire five-element sect was on high alert as if they were facing a great enemy. Chu Yang felt it the most. He tried to control the mountain protection formation of the five-element sect, but he realized that many elders and peak masters of the five-element sect were paying attention to the mountain protection formation. They were very vigilant. As soon as he entered, he would be immediately discovered. In addition, he also remembered the last words of the former sect master of the five-element sect before he left. There should be many shocking things happening next. It will be very interesting. I'm very curious how you will react. He said that there were many shocking things. Are they the assassination of the four emperors of the four nations, the poisoning, and so on? Dark clouds were pressing down on the city, and the city was about to be destroyed. A storm was coming. After Chu Yang heard all kinds of shocking news, he felt that a great storm was brewing and was about to arrive. If the five-element sect was a city, then Wei Nation, Wu Nation, Korea, Qi Nation, and the Seven Stars sect could also be said to be strongholds. The descendants of the great emperor of the eastern wilderness seemed to be planning to uproot all the strongholds in the periphery before attacking the five-element sect. Among the major forces in the eastern wilderness, the five-element sect's foundation was undoubtedly the deepest and most powerful. This was generally acknowledged by most people in the eastern wilderness. In addition, Chu Yang had previously caused a ruckus in the five-element sect. He had removed many of the Soul Devourer clan's infiltration of the five-element sect, which alerted everyone in the five-element sect. He even named the sect master of the five-element sect and suspected that he was a spy of the Soul Devourer clan. In this way, it was not wrong to say that the five-element sect was the most difficult bone to chew for the descendants of the great emperor of the eastern wilderness. Chu Yang felt the danger, but there was nowhere to run. If he left the five-element sect now, he would probably not even have the chance to counterattack. The only thing he could do now was to cultivate and continue to cultivate. Lil Guari and the parrot also sensed that something was off. They didn't dare to make a ruckus next to Chu Yang, and just like Chu Yang, they were cultivating with all their might. Burning Heaven's holy sun, Cao Ju, and the silver wolf naturally smelled a great danger. In the eastern wilderness, perhaps only the descendants of the great emperor of the eastern wilderness could kill the four emperors of the four countries. At this moment, They also realized how shocking the strength of the descendants of great emperors in the eastern wilderness was. Once they burst out, almost no one could stop them. As for Chu Yang's pressure, they were all too familiar with it. Not only did Chu Yang destroy many of the plans of the descendants of great emperors in the eastern wilderness, he even exposed the various ugly faces of the descendants of great emperors in the eastern wilderness. It could be said that the person that the descendants of great emperors in the eastern wilderness hated the most was definitely Chu Yang. After that, for the next 3 days, the atmosphere in the Five Elements sect was very oppressive, and as time passed silently, near noon on the 4th day, dang 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 dang, the extremely melodious sound of the bell resounded throughout the entire Five Elements sect, and every disciple of the Five Elements sect could hear it clearly. The sound of the bell caused many people in the Five Elements sect to be slightly stunned. Was this the right time to carry out the successor competition? At this moment, the eastern wilderness was in turmoil and chaos, and there were even enemies hiding in the dark who could launch an attack on the Five Elements sect at any time. The Seven Stars sect and the Longhu sect were examples. Dong dong dong, dong dong dong. After the sound of the bell, the impassioned and intense rumbling of war drums resounded, causing the floating clouds in the sky to disperse. When the sound entered the ears of everyone in the Five Elements sect, it caused them to feel as if their blood was boiling. Bang! When Chu Yang heard the sound of the bell and drum, he woke up from his cultivation. His eyes suddenly opened, and immediately, it was as if the heavens and hell had appeared, and light and darkness intertwined. His gaze looked towards the depths of the Five Elements sect. The successor competition has begun. I want to see what methods you have, and whether or not you can stop me. Little Gwari, little bitch, let's go. Chapter 879. The Five Elements sect's annual True Disciple competition had begun. Many disciples of the Five Elements sect gathered from all directions, like a tide, like a school of fish, majestic and mighty. There was a special location for the True Disciple competition, the Five Elements sect's second round venue. This was a small secret realm that could accommodate at least 500,000 people. At this moment, the second round venue opened. The Five Elements sect's disciples entered from the 4 entrances of the east, west, north, and south. The scene was like thousands of fish trying to jump through the Dragon Gate, and the 4 entrances were like 4 dragon gates. Especially this year, it was even more popular than the previous years. If one wanted to find the reason, then Chu Yang's participation in this True Disciple competition should be the greatest reason. The structure of the second round venue was very simple. If one looked down from midair, it was just a circle. The innermost circle was the main arena, and the outer one was the 100 sub-arenas connected to form a circle. Between the sub-arenas, there was a large gap, enough space for everyone to watch. It was the same between the main arena and the sub-arenas. Once the top 50 disciples were determined, these top 50 disciples would fight in the main arena. At that time, the 100 sub-arenas would become the spectator stands. There was also a circular platform floating above it, called the second round platform. The Five Elements sect's sect master, the various peak masters, and many other elders would watch the battles from above. Whether it was the True Disciple competition or the Saint Child competition, the competition for the position of God Child would all be held here. The True Disciple competition was not a competition between the Five Elements sect's true disciples, but a competition between the Five Elements sect's core disciples for the sake of becoming a true disciple. The True Disciple competition was the Saint Child competition. The core disciples of the Five Elements sect were the core disciples of the Five Elements sect. They were the middle level of the Five Elements sect. The number of people participating in the grand competition was not the most, but they received the most attention. The level of competition was also relatively high. Therefore, every time the True Disciple grand competition was held, the Five Elements sect would be the most lively. When Chu Yang arrived, the entire second round hall was in an uproar. It was as if a huge pot of boiling water was boiling. The clamor seemed to have become visible. It was as if steam was rising from boiling water. Chu Yang's eyesight was very good. He looked at the 2 round platforms and discovered that the successor disciple competition this time was hosted by 3 peak masters of the 5 inner peaks and 2 peak masters of the outer peaks. There were 3 peak masters of the 5 inner peaks: wood element peak master, Cao Ju's father, Cao Rong, and water element peak master, Lu Tianrui. There was another person that Chu Yang didn't recognize, but he sensed that the metal spirit qi in his body was very strong. He should be the peak master of the metal peak, by Sansi. Chu Yang was very familiar with the 2 peak masters of the outer peak, Sui Yunfu and Long Face. The adjudicating elder, the sect leader of the 5 element sect, and the others were not present. If his guess was correct, they should have gone to deal with the recent major events in the Eastern Wilderness. Senior brother Chu is here. Look. Senior brother Chu is here. Chu Yang's appearance was immediately noticed by everyone. Instantly, countless gazes were cast on him. I didn't expect that senior brother Chu would actually come to participate in the successor competition. This is too excessive, and it's also too unfair to us. That's right. With senior brother Chu's ability, there's no need for him to participate in the successor competition. Senior brother Chu, he also has no other choice. The sect leader said that according to the rules, what can he do? Unless he rebels. Discussions were everywhere. It was still the topic that the 5 element sect's people were discussing, but now it seemed to be even more intense. Swish, swish, swish. Cao Ju, Silver Wolf, Jin Duo, and Chu Runxian's group, as well as many people from the East Arrival Pavilion and the original Coiling Dragon Martial Institution, all leaned towards Chu Yang. Big bastard Chu, you are purely here to bully others. Big monster Chu, the time for you to be the center of attention has come again. But do you think it's meaningful to always be the center of attention? Being unrivaled in the world, lonely as snow. Hehe, this feeling is definitely not good. You will no longer have the chance to play the pig to eat the tiger, and cheat others. Chapter 880. When the parrot heard this, it glanced over with disdain. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. My master, who is blessed by the heavens, has long disdained such low-level interests. It is too degrading. The 2 things that I'm talking about, your thoughts must follow. Don't speak nonsense and embarrass my lord. This parrot was really not a plaything. Jin Duo sized up the parrot. I finally know why you are hairless. There is a reason behind it. Hee. The silver wolf also smirked. You have to pay attention to strategy when pursuing a female parrot. You are too anxious. The parrot was sad. Was this bird willing to do that? However, it did not show any weakness verbally. What do you know? In my master's words, this is called not taking the normal path. That is what he wants you to say. Haha. The silver wolf and the rest burst into laughter. What are you laughing at? The parrot was furious. Did they think that this divine bird was easy to bully? Its featherless wings agilely poked the silver wolf and the rest. You actually did not kneel in front of my master. You are all guilty of the most heinous crimes. Why are you still not kneeling? The parrot was pretending to be Chu Yang. Jin Duo and the silver wolf immediately took action to deal with the parrot. Immediately, there was chaos. Everyone looked sideways at this scene. Chu Yang felt countless gazes sweeping over him. Some gazes were like sharp arrows, as if they wanted to pierce through Chu Yang and kill him. Chu Yang's divine senses were very sharp. He did not need to look to know who they were: the so-called son of the 5 elements sect, Zhan Zhongtian, the peak lord of the water element peak, Lu Tianrui, and the others. How many people liked you? How many people hated you? Chu Yang didn't care. His focus wasn't on these people. The 5 elements sect's sovereign wasn't here at the moment. But he would definitely show up when the battle between him and Zhun Wudao came to a conclusion and decided their life and death. In addition, he was also slightly surprised. Zhan Zhongtian's cultivation level rose very quickly. Chu Yang sensed that his cultivation level was at least at the 8th level of the soul reincarnation realm. Clang, clang, clanged the bell on the second round platform rang, and the entire place became silent. After that, the true disciple competition officially began. One name after another was called out, and very quickly, each and every disciple ascended the corresponding stage according to their own identity card. In an instant, 100 arenas were competing at the same time. The scene was extremely spectacular, but it was not chaotic at all. The strength of the disciples fighting in the 100 arenas varied, and the speed at which victory was decided was also different. Therefore, the progress of the 100 arenas was completely different. After an unknown amount of time, Chu Yang heard his name being called. Arena number 100, Chu Yang, an aged voice rang out from the 100th arena. The host of the 100th arena was an old man who was about 56 years old. He deliberately emphasized, and his voice was especially vigorous, causing the entire second arena to suddenly fall silent. Boom. After that, the crowd surged like a tide, crazily rushing towards the 100th arena. As for the other arenas, all of them became empty. Even the battles in the remaining 99 arenas were completely stopped at this moment. The gazes of the disciples who were competing in the arenas all landed on the 100th arena. Among them, there was no lack of people who directly gave up on the battle and ran over to watch. The other arenas in the 100th arena had already started their battles. Swish! Chu Yang's figure moved and directly landed on the 100th arena. He bowed to the old man in the 100th arena and then stood tall on the arena. Yi Jian, please come up to the arena, haha. The moment the old man's voice fell, a loud laughter instantly rang out. Haha, it's actually me, Yi Jian. This is simply heaven-defying luck. The laughter did not stop. A young man of about 25 years old with peach blossom eyes instantly attracted the attention of everyone present. Chapter 881. Boom. Hearing this, the crowd went into an uproar, feeling that it was unbelievable. There was actually someone who dared to question Chu Yang, provoking Chu Yang. Who is this person, daring to boast so shamelessly? Is he crazy? He's not crazy. I think there's something wrong with his brain. He's courting death, daring to say such words. The more arrogant he is now, the more ugly his death will be. It was one-sided. Everyone thought that this young man was overestimating himself. If you think you have the ability to challenge Chu Yang, you can fight with Chu Yang. Even if you lose, Chu Yang won't do anything. However, since you're so arrogant, provoking others the moment you get on the stage, how can Chu Yang not teach you a lesson? Isn't that Li Tianliang from the water element peak? He's only at the first level of the soul reincarnation realm, not enough. Where did he get the confidence to say such words? What bullshit confidence does he have? He's not even my opponent. I think he's just cannon fodder, sent to die. The water element peak's peak lord, Lu Tianrue, is not on good terms with senior brother Chu. Could he be sent up as cannon fodder? But isn't such a thought too stupid? Is this thing good enough? Li Tianliang, a core disciple of the water element peak? Chu Yang couldn't help but squint his eyes. He couldn't see through his opponent's methods. This Li Tianliang was too weak. At this moment, Chu Yang heard this, and Li Tianliang snorted. So what if I lose? So what if I'm taught a lesson? At least I have the courage to challenge, do you? Who are you mocking now? Li Tianliang's voice was powerful, provoking everyone. When he looked at Chu Yang again, his expression was filled with mockery. Chu Yang, so what if I'm provoking you? It's just a beating, a lot of serious injuries. What can you do to me? Or, if it doesn't work, I'll just admit defeat. What can you do to me? Only then did Chu Yang understand. The other party seemed to be planning to use Li Tianliang to lead the 5 Elements sects group to provoke Chu Yang. With Li Tianliang taking the lead, the people behind him felt even less pressure. After all, it was only the true disciple competition. It was impossible for Chu Yang to take their lives. Furthermore, even if Li Tianliang and the others lost to Chu Yang, it would not be a loss of face. Moreover, they did not need to win. If they could withstand a few moves from Chu Yang, it would be enough to brag for a while. Those who are barefoot are not afraid of those who wear shoes. Pa pa pa. The monotonous sound of applause suddenly rang out. When everyone heard the sound, they realized that it was Chu Yang who was clapping on the stage. Their hearts couldn't help but tremble as they thought to themselves, this Li Tianliang is finished. You're right. As a man, you should have courage. I admire your courage. Chu Yang smiled and said, if I were you, I would also think that this is a great opportunity. It could even be said to be a blessing from heaven. Li Tianliang snorted coldly and said, Chu Yang, who are you mocking? The outcome is hard to predict. Even if I lose, what can you do? Unscrupulous. Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? Chu Yang sneered in his heart. However, it was really not good for him to kill Li Tianliang. After all, it was only the true disciple competition. If he killed Li Tianliang, his reputation would be a little bad. At this moment, Chu Yang's perception was very sharp. He noticed that on the stage, Water Element Peak's Peak Master Lu Tianrui and Metal Element Peak Master Bai Sansi had already revealed smiles on their faces. Obviously, they were very satisfied with Li Tianliang's performance. Chapter 882. Chu Yang's expression didn't change. With a faint smile on his face, he said to the old man on the stage, Senior, can we start now? Seeing Chu Yang's smile, Cao Ju, Silver Wolf, and Jin Juo were already mourning for Li Tianliang. You dare to play such a small trick in front of that bastard Chu Yang? I'll teach you how to write the word regret in a minute. Gaga. The parrot laughed weirdly. It poked Li Tianliang with its wings and laughed loudly. That thing, you're finished. You're completely finished. This divine bird promises you that you'll want to die a horrible death later, Gaga. Once the parrot spoke, the entire place went silent. It was as if everyone was thinking about how Chu Yang would deal with Li Tianliang later. Li Tianliang's loss was a sure thing. There was no need to think about it. The key was how to make Li Tianliang regret it. Regret it so much that they wanted to know how to write the word regret. Li Tianliang beat his chest and said with disdain and pride, Come, let your grandpa Li see what you're capable of. If you can use it, I'll take it all. If I frown, I'm your grandson? Can you not insult my grandson? My grandson won't be like you. You're always a fool. Ha ha. Cao Ju and the others all laughed. You're courting death, Buzz. Li Tianliang instantly released his own domain. The purple domain enveloped Chu Yang. Chu Yang allowed the purple domain to envelop him. A domain of the first level of the soul wheel realm was just a piece of paper in front of him. Kai Kai. Chu Yang flicked his finger continuously. Rays of light shot out and pierced towards Li Tianliang. Li Tianliang was shocked. He retracted his domain and tried to block it. However, the rays of light pierced through his domain and landed on his body. At the same time, Li Tianliang suddenly realized that there was a shadow under his feet. He didn't know when it had taken control of him. Kai Kai Kai. The shadow turned into black rays of light and landed on Li Tianliang's body. Together with the rays of light, they controlled Li Tianliang. At first glance, Li Tianliang seemed to be a puppet in the hands of Chu Yang. At this moment, Li Tianliang also found that he was completely out of control. His soul and body seemed to be completely separated by something. Now, he couldn't speak, and he couldn't even move his eyes. Li Tianliang, I believe you when you say you're a man. Chu Yang smiled and said, You said that it's a great fortune to be able to fight me first, and I agree. For such a brave and intelligent child like you, I will definitely not be stingy with my reward. Therefore, I plan to teach you a peerless divine technique. This divine skill is called the left and right interfighting technique. I will teach you now. Draw a circle with your left hand and a square with your right. Li Tianliang did as he was told and couldn't resist at all. His body didn't listen to him at all, even if he was struggling. His pupils started to tremble. What kind of sorcery is this? Is the puppet sorcery of the divine command peak so terrifying? This was also the question and shock of many of the Five Elements sect's disciples present. Sui Yunfu also narrowed his eyes at this moment. As the peak master of the divine command peak, he was naturally proficient in the puppet sorcery and beast taming technique. However, Chu Yang's technique was even more brilliant than his. He directly turned a living person into a puppet. Very good, you've done very well. You're too talented. Chu Yang said excitedly in a loud voice, a genius like you is hard to come by in 1,000 years. I'm actually lucky enough to meet a genius like you. Therefore, no matter what, I will definitely do my best to teach you. I won't hesitate to work hard. Cao Ju and the rest were already speechless. They could guess the result, but not the process. The entire place was dead silent. There wasn't a trace of sound, so much so that the strange laughter of the parrot was especially loud. Keek, a peerless genius. You must practice such a peerless divine technique well. Don't let down my master's kindness. You are indeed a peerless genius. After that, Chu Yang cried out in surprise again. In the first stage, you have to draw a square with your left hand and a circle with your right hand. You actually did it in such a short time. It's simply unbelievable. I feel like I'm dreaming. Such a peerless genius, such a peerless genius. Li Tianliang was probably going to cry. Chapter 883. Peerless Genius. Let's begin the second stage of the left-right inter-combat technique. Right hand slap the left cheek, left hand slap the right cheek. Slap. Li Tianliang slapped the left side of his face as if he wanted to kill his father's murderer. Everyone felt their faces hurt, and even their ears were buzzing. Stars appeared in their eyes. Slap. Then, Li Tianliang seemed to see his son's murderer again as he slapped the right side of his face. Then, both of his enemies seemed to be swollen from the slaps and looked like they were about to explode. Yes, 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 that's it. Peerless genius. You really are a peerless genius. You're too talented. I'm afraid I'll never meet someone as talented as you again in my life. Chu Yang clapped and encouraged him. Peerless genius, please keep up the good work. The time for you to unify the Eastern Wilderness is coming. When that time comes, everyone will definitely see your supreme demeanor and peerless appearance. Everyone will definitely be deeply impressed by you. Slap, slap, slap. Li Tianliang kept slapping his face. His teeth were falling out, his ears were going deaf, and his eyeballs were hurting. He had originally thought that if he couldn't take it anymore, he would immediately admit defeat. But now, he was even deprived of the right to speak. The crisp sound was extremely clear in the silent second-round arena, but no one sympathized with Li Tianliang. Li Tianliang was too arrogant just now. Not to mention that Chu Yang's name had shaken the Eastern Wilderness and the things he had done were earth-shattering. A few days ago, he had directly killed the burning sky holy sun. You should know what's good for you. Moreover, intervening in the battle between Chu Yang and the Five Elements divine child was even more foolish. Therefore, Li Tianliang deserved what had happened to him now. Even the Five Elements divine child was afraid of Chu Yang. Where did Li Tianliang get the courage to challenge Chu Yang's might? If he didn't take care of Li Tianliang, where would Chu Yang's might be? Peerless genius, your cultivation progress is extremely good. Now, we will proceed to the third stage. Chu Yang looked up at the sky and said, no matter what you do, you have to be sincere. The cultivation of martial arts is the same. Now, the most important step has come. If you can move the heavens and move the earth, you will have a small achievement in this left and right interfighting technique. Bang bang bang. Li Tianliang knelt down with a thudding sound. After that, he started to kowtow. To be more precise, he was pounding his head on the ground. Each time his head landed, the arena would shake. In just a few moments, his forehead was badly mutilated. It was a horrible sight to behold. Tragic, tragic, tragic. Enough. On the second-round platform, the water element peak master Lu Tianrui shouted angrily, Chu Yang, what are you trying to do by humiliating your fellow disciples like this? Shua. Chu Yang glanced at him coldly, what is it, peak master Lu Tianrui? Are you jealous of this peerless genius and want to cultivate this technique too? Facing Chu Yang's cold glare, Lu Tianrui could not help but feel fear in his heart. His body unconsciously took a step back, revealing a terrified expression. Lu Tianrui, peak master Lu, if you want to cultivate it, just say it. How would I know if you don't say it? Chu Yang looked at Lu Tianrui with a smile, since you are not answering, it seems like you really want to cultivate this technique too, impudent. His voice was like thunder, rumbling loudly, interrupting Chu Yang's words. The metal element peak master stood up in anger. Chu Yang glanced at him coldly, then said to the parrot, little bitch, there are a lot of peerless geniuses. You will teach this peerless genius the technique, and I will teach these two peerless geniuses. Gaga. The parrot laughed strangely, high profile, high profile. When the parrot arrives, don't clap, just scream. Hair in place, temperament noble, long live my master. Chapter 884. Two peerless geniuses, which one of you will go first? Chu Yang swung his sleeves and flew up to the stage. He looked at Lu Tianrui and Bai Sansi with a smile. Cao Rong, Sui Yunfu, and Long Face did not say a word and stayed far away. They were laughing in their hearts. Do you think this little bastard is easy to mess with? Or do you think he's still the same little bastard from before? He's asking for humiliation. Things were different now. Chu Yang was not someone Lu Tianrui and Bai Sansi could scold and teach. If Lu Tianrui and Bai Sansi were upright, Chu Yang might show them some respect. However, Chu Yang could feel their hostility from the beginning. How could he tolerate them? Chu Yang, you're too arrogant. I'm the peak master of water element peak. How dare you talk to me like that? Lu Tianrui put on a strong front but was cowardly at heart. He was full of regret. Arrogant, domineering, and disrespectful. The Five Elements sect will not tolerate a traitor like you. Bai Sansi's voice was extremely cold. His tiger-like eyes were filled with murderous intent. You dare to kill me? Chu Yang sneered. I'm arrogant, I'm domineering. What can you do? You two weaklings are not good enough. Bang! The heavenly rock wings spread out. Chu Yang's back was covered in a dazzling golden light. He was extremely fast. He was like a ray of golden light that went straight for Lu Tianrui. Lu Tianrui released his domain and punched out. A lake appeared and waves surged. This attack was abnormally powerful. However, its power was not fully released. It was like a piece of paper that Chu Yang broke through. With a snap, Chu Yang swung his hand and grabbed Lu Tianrui's neck, lifting him up. Swoosh. He then rushed towards Bai Sansi. Bai Sansi looked up to the sky and let out a long roar. Endless golden light burst out from his body as the killing power swept out. A ferocious tiger appeared, bringing with it a storm of weapons. It was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were holding all kinds of weapons as they charged forward. The ferocious tiger was the commander of this army. The power of metal contained killing intent. The white tiger was in charge of the west, but it was also in charge of killing. The perfect combination of the two greatly increased its might. However, it was still not enough. The difference between him and the desolate demon prince and the son of the sea god was too great. Moreover, Chu Yang had already reached the peak of the third revolution of the soul ascension realm. How could a mere soul reincarnation realm cultivator be worthy of his attention? Chu Yang also directly broke through Bai Sansi's attack, flew over, directly grabbed Bai Sansi's neck, and lifted him up. With Lu Tianrui in his right hand and Bai Sansi in his left, Chu Yang lifted them up like two chickens. In front of all the Five Element sect's disciples, they were battered and exhausted. Their faces were red with blood. Lu Tianrui, Chu Yang looked coldly at Lu Tianrui on his right and said coldly, "What can you do about my arrogance?" He turned his head and looked at Bai Sansi on his left. "Hey, are you satisfied with my bossy attitude?" Bang bang bang. Chu Yang pinched them until their eyes rolled back, then threw them aside. "What right do you have to scold me? How dare you put on airs in front of me? Do you really think I can be bullied so easily?" Bai Sansi and Lu Tianrui were humiliated. Even when they were gasping for air, their fingers were still trembling as they pointed at Chu Yang. "You crack." Chu Yang broke their fingers. Then, he kicked them down from the second round platform with two bangs. He swept his gaze across the audience and said in a clear voice, "Someone said that I was arrogant and domineering just now. I'm very satisfied. Today, I'll show you how arrogant and domineering I am." He pointed at the crowd and said loudly, "Also, someone said that if I want to become a true disciple, a saint, and obtain the right to challenge the deity, I must pass your test. I agree with this, but it is too troublesome for all of you to come one by one. Chapter 885. Now, all of you can come at me together. I will beat all of you up by myself. When Chu Yang's voice rang out, almost everyone from the Five Elements sect felt as though they were struck by lightning. Their bodies trembled and their minds rumbled. This was too arrogant, too savage. Gaga. When the parrot heard this, it laughed strangely. You guys are all idiots. You even dared to make my master unhappy. Please allow me to observe 3 seconds of silence for you to express my deep condolences. Quack quack. This was Chu Yang's true colors. When the Five Elements sect's disciples heard the parrot's words, they couldn't help but be shocked. Previously, they were all talking about how impressive Chu Yang was, but none of them had seen him before. Now, they finally saw his true colors. Domineering, invincible, insufferably arrogant. No one was worthy of his attention. In his eyes, everything was bullshit. No matter how many people there were, it was useless. After Chu Yang spoke, his attention was placed on Jun Zhontian. Even if the Five Elements sect's disciples didn't like his behavior, they were afraid of his reputation and definitely wouldn't dare to make a move. At most, they would be unhappy with Chu Yang's arrogance. This was something they could still tolerate. Therefore, if there was a different voice, it would definitely be from Jun Zhontian. As expected, Chu Yang's sharp divine sense clearly captured the mental fluctuations that Jun Zhontian sent out. It was obvious that he was giving orders. Beside Jun Zhontian, there were 5 young men around the age of 27. Every one of them had concealed their aura, but how could they hide it from Chu Yang? These 5 people were at least at the 7th or 8th level of the soul reincarnation realm. Moreover, the skin color of these people was a little strange. One was slightly green, one was slightly red, one was slightly black, one was slightly white, and there was even one whose skin was strangely yellow. Chimph, who do you think you are? Do you think we will listen to whatever you say? When Jun Zhontian gave the order, a burly middle-aged man immediately stood out and spoke with a loud voice. Shua. Chu Yang's figure flashed and arrived before the middle-aged man in an instant. He slammed the middle-aged man's head into the ground. With a loud bang, the ground exploded. Tiny spiderweb-like cracks covered the ground. Dust rose into the air. Half of the middle-aged man's body was directly stuffed into the ground. His legs kicked powerlessly in the air. The power of this attack was obvious. Many people couldn't help but shiver when they saw this. Chu Yang was too ruthless. Chu Yang raised his hand, and a vortex appeared in the center of his palm. He pulled the middle-aged man out of the vortex. Everyone was shocked to see that his entire face was badly mutilated, and many places revealed eerie white bones. It was extremely horrifying. Pa. The spirit Qi transformed into a large hand and grabbed the middle-aged man, lifting him up. Chu Yang said coldly, "Who do you think I am?" Hearing this, everyone was speechless. They immediately felt that this person wasn't worthy of sympathy. Chu Yang had made a name for himself outside, and his name had shaken the entire eastern wilderness. Who do you think he is? If you don't know who he is, you can go outside and ask. At this juncture, you actually dare to ask him who he is. The middle-aged man's entire body trembled from the electric shock. Then, the smell of urine wafted over. Chu Yang sneered and threw him out. Then, he swept his gaze over. Who else wants to ask who I am? I want to. A handsome young man sneered. I want to ask, who do you think you are? Very well. Chu Yang's figure disappeared as soon as he finished speaking. When he was seen again, he was already beside the handsome young man. The handsome young man's eyes were wide open in disbelief, as if he was surprised at how he died. Chapter 886. Chu Yang, you're simply an evil demon. Just because of a disagreement, you want to kill your fellow disciples? This is your majesty, this is your illustrious reputation. I'm the first one to refuse to accept this. Everyone, this bastard is simply deranged. The elite disciple competition was originally a spar and competition between our fellow disciples, yet now it has become a slaughterhouse for a devil. How can we tolerate such a vicious and malicious person? The fiercer Chu Yang was, the fiercer the accusations were. Many people who weren't afraid of death jumped out to criticize Chu Yang. Zhang Zhongtian looked at this scene and couldn't help but sneer. He secretly mocked in his heart, idiots. Killing people in this kind of situation, not to mention having a bad reputation, would definitely arouse public indignation. It was not impossible for a crowd to attack. The more Zhang Zhongtian thought about it, the happier the smile on his face became. If Chu Yang's reputation was ruined, Chu Yang would be alone and unable to lead the general trend, so it would be much easier to deal with him. What made Zhang Zhongtian despise the most was that this was originally Chu Yang's specialty. As a descendant of the Eastern Wilderness's great emperor, his reputation was not tarnished by Chu Yang, so they had no choice but to give up this honorable identity and start all over again. Now Chu Yang was also suffering from this tumble. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, how could Zhang Zhongtian not be happy? Moreover, what they had done was indeed intolerable, so it was natural for their reputation to be tarnished. However, Chu Yang had only killed his enemies. This made Zhang Zhongtian even more happy. That's right, he's famous in the Eastern Barren Territory. But so what? Can he disregard our lives? What's the difference between him and those demons of the Soul Devourer clan and Thousand Demon sect? I think he's the next Soul Devourer clan and Thousand Demon sect. Saying that the monster race is hateful, but what's the difference between him and the monster race? He also doesn't bully, oppress, humiliate us as he pleases, and slaughter us as he pleases. Many people spoke out, and behind them, many people stood out to criticize. Chu Yang was being pointed at by thousands and spurned by tens of thousands. Bang 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 bang. With a series of muffled sounds, Chu Yang's figure flashed like lightning. Just as they saw his afterimage, one of them fell down, dead as can be. More than a dozen people were killed in the blink of an eye, while a few others were thrown to the parrot by Chu Yang. Little bitch, open up these people's brains and take a look. Why are they mimicking a bunch of rats? I'm very curious about the structure of their brains. Gaga. Hearing this, the parrot laughed strangely. Yes, master, I promise to stimulate them so that their IQ will return to normal, and their brain structure will not be stupid. I will make them deeply grateful to master, and set up a longevity plaque for master at home. It pointed at the crowd with its featherless wings and shouted, brainless people, come out now. I'll teach you all a lesson in one go and teach you how to behave. Then, it laughed strangely and looked at Zhang Zhongtian, that little rat, playing such tricks in front of master. Do you think master doesn't know? My master is invincible, and has been lonely for a long time. He just happened to have nothing to do, so he used you to make fun of you. I didn't expect you to laugh so proudly. This divine bird really admires you. Chu Yang was very satisfied with the parrot. As expected of a cheap parrot, their cooperation was very good. At this moment, the people of the Five Elements sect couldn't help but look at Zhang Zhongtian, the son of the sect leader. They naturally wouldn't believe the parrot's words immediately, but they still had doubts in their hearts. Moreover, why didn't the elders make a move? Why didn't they shout to stop them? Why did they just watch the 10 disciples of the Five Elements sect be killed? Could it be that they were so afraid of Chu Yang? In addition, some people of the Five Elements sect immediately thought of the original accusation against the sect leader of the Five Elements sect, a spy of the Soul Devourer clan. A spy of the Soul Devourer clan, that was a spy of the descendants of the great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness. When they saw the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines, and their hair stood on end. Chu Yang was rude and domineering just now, but he had established a good reputation before. For the sake of millions of souls, he killed many people of the Soul Devourer clan and the Thousand Demon sect. If those people who said that Chu Yang was a devil went outside and said that, even if they didn't get killed by Chu Yang, they would definitely be killed by the people outside. Chapter 887. Even if the majority of people didn't understand the reason, they would still be frightened by Chu Yang's ferocious might and wouldn't dare to rashly make a move. For Chu Yang, this was enough. Swish. Chu Yang's figure moved and went straight for Zhang Zhongtian. Zhang Zhongtian was shocked, and the 5 people with strange skin color beside him immediately shouted in anger, "You dare!" Boom. 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 They each made a move. Instantly, green, red, yellow, white, and black spirit chi of 5 colors surged out and enveloped Jun Zhongtian. Sizzling sounds rang out in quick succession. It was as if a large piece of meat was being roasted in this huge world at this moment. It was sizzling with oil. Black smoke billowed and rose, forming a beacon of fire. The stench and fishy smell also swept out. Instantly, the people around Jun Zhongtian, upon coming in contact with the spirit chi released by the 5 people, immediately cried out miserably. Their flesh and blood were corroded, and they quickly died. The color on their faces was extremely frightening. Highly toxic. Extremely violent poison. However, it was useless. As Chu Yang rushed over, a whirlpool appeared in his hand and directly sucked away the poisonous spiritual energy of these 5 people. Then, his hand directly pierced through Jun Zhongtian's 8th grade soul circulation realm domain and grabbed him by the neck. Then, he lifted him up into the air. Jun Zhongtian, you were very proud just now, weren't you? Chu Yang looked at the people who were poisoned to death, and said with a smile, it seems like a lot of rats have died. Those 5 slaves of yours really care about you. The people clustered around Jun Zhongtian were mostly his trusted aides. Otherwise, if they were ordinary disciples of the 5 Elements sect, wouldn't Jun Zhongtian's secret movements be easily detected? Chu Yang, are you planning to rebel? You even dare to touch the son of the sect leader. Chu Yang didn't even look at them, and said to Jun Zhongtian, you should indeed be proud, you got your way. However, just like what my little bastard said, I'm idle anyway, so finding something to do is also not bad. Otherwise, wouldn't it be meaningless for me to participate in this true disciple competition? Bang! After saying that, Chu Yang threw Jun Zhongtian back to the 5 people. Jun Zhongtian coughed violently as he gasped for air. Rat Monarch, gather all your rats and try your best to instigate as many idiots as possible. Make them attack. My original words are still valid. Chu Yang looked at Jun Zhongtian with a smile. I'll beat up all of you. Please satisfy me. If there are less than 1,000 people attacking later, I'll skin you alive. Everyone was speechless when they heard this. He was actually worried that there would be fewer people. Could it be that Chu Yang was really sick from boredom? Just how much disdain did she have for her to act like this? On the second round platform, the Water Element Peak Lord Lu Tianrui and the Metal Element Peak Lord Bai Sansi couldn't help but exchange a glance. They both saw the resentment in each other's eyes and the helplessness on their faces. All schemes and tricks were useless in front of absolute strength. On the other side, Cao Rong, Sui Yunfu, and Long Face looked at each other and smiled, shaking their heads. The 3 of them weren't surprised at all that Chu Yang was like this. The moment Chu Yang appeared at the True Disciple competition venue, they knew that something was going to happen. If Chu Yang, this little bastard, didn't cause some trouble, he wouldn't be a little bastard, let alone Chu Yang. Chapter 888. So, the parrot cupped its 2 featherless wings and cupped its fists. It then said to the crowd, so I beg of you, please satisfy my master. Later on, you must make your move. Cao Ju, the Silver Wolf, Jin Duo, the East Arrival Pavilion, and the people from the Coiling Dragon Martial Institution all glared angrily at the parrot. Chu Na, who was in the crowd, wanted nothing more than to strangle the parrot to death. How dare it make trouble for her little brother? The parrot ignored Chu Na and angrily said to Cao Ju and the others, what are you looking at? This divine bird understands the heart of my master. Then it pointed its wings at them and said, you are jealous. You hate me. You hate me for stealing your words, and you can't even say a fart. Hearing this, everyone knew why the parrot was called Lil Bitch. Lil Guari had already covered its crystal clear eyes, as if it was embarrassed. How could it have such a shameless little brother? Jun Zhongtian and the strange-skinned man beside him were so disregarded and despised by Chu Yang that they were burning with anger. They secretly issued orders one after another. Soon after, many people stood out, filled with righteous indignation. Evil demons are evil demons. After killing someone, you are so skilled at covering it up. You can even turn black into white. But what's the use? Do you think you can deceive us? That's right. Our 5 Elements sect will not tolerate such an evil thief. Kill him. He's just one person. Even if he's strong, so what? We can drown him with a spit each. What's there to fear about death? 18 years later, I'll be a hero again. I want to see how many of us you can kill, demon. Rumble. Suddenly, the earth trembled, and a murderous aura shot to the sky. The spiritual energy surged like a tide, as if it had gathered into a vast ocean. In an instant, it was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were charging towards Chu Yang. At a glance, there were at least 2,000 people. Chu Yang's expression changed slightly. He didn't know if these 2,000 people were all from the great emperor of the Eastern Wasteland or something else. With so many people forming a huge force, ordinary five-element sect's disciples might also attack in a fit of anger. If you attack me, then don't blame me. Chu Yang wasn't worried about his own safety. He was just worried that he had killed the wrong person. However, there were so many people that he couldn't care less. Shoo, shoo. Like a group of archers in an army, 10,000 arrows were shot at the same time. 100 or so people gathered together and condensed their spiritual aura into sharp arrows, forming a huge rain of arrows to attack. Another 100 or so people used their spiritual aura to form long spears to pierce through. This was the first wave. The organization of the attack was very orderly. Like an army in battle, they first used arrows to suppress the enemy and then charged. Then, flood dragons, pythons, eagles, lions, tigers, cauldrons, bells, pagodas, buildings, rivers, giant trees, giant rocks, and all kinds of other things that were constructed by Jin Yuan and Ling Qi flooded over. The sky was densely packed. It was as if the grocery store of heaven had fallen down, and a mountain forest had appeared out of thin air, with birds and beasts galloping in it. Countless attacks converged into a storm, forming a huge wave that swept over, causing the world to rumble. That kind of momentum made everyone feel as if the heavens were enraged and some kind of disaster had descended. Everyone was instantly speechless. They didn't make a sound as they stared blankly at the scene in front of them. Chu Enei's heart was already in her throat. She didn't want her younger brother to do such a dangerous thing in the face of such a terrifying enemy. However, she also knew that Chu Yang had to do it. At this moment, the only thing she could do was pray. Cao Ju and the others were no longer smiling. When they were at Emperor Island, they had seen a similar scene and knew that Chu Yang should be able to withstand it. However, when they saw such a terrifying attack in the sky again, they still felt their scalps go numb. The parrot glanced at them and only looked at them with disdain. It focused on educating the dozen people that Chu Yang had thrown to it. As for Xiao Guari, it was also staring blankly at this scene. Its little claws suddenly clenched into fists. It suddenly felt that it was too weak. Cao Rong, Sui Yunfu, Long Face, Lu Tianrue, Bai Sansi, and the others all had different reactions. Chapter 889. Zhun Zhontian and the 5 people with strange skin colors also took action. There was no one within a 30-feet radius of the 6 of them. Those 5 people had made their move before Zhun Zhontian. Green, black, white, yellow, and red spirit energies of these 5 colors formed into a poisonous snake with 5 colored spots all over its body. Then, these 5 colored spots split into smaller snakes and slithered towards Chu Yang. It was as if a group of snakes had appeared all over the mountain. Although the 5 colored spots were very small, they were extremely eye-catching due to the terrifying colors. They filled the void, and the 5 colored spots seemed to cause the void to suffer from a type of mottled disease. Zhun Zhontian, on the other hand, condensed a multicolored giant hand. Each of the colors on it was extremely heavy, to the point that this kind of multicolored hand was frightening to look at. 5-colored spotted snake. 5-colored spotted poison. Chu Yang had long noticed them. To be precise, his focus had always been on Zhun Zhontian and the 5 people. Initially, when Chu Yang saw the 5 people with strange skin colors, he knew that the 5 of them cultivated poison arts. They were the 5 poison people. The reason was naturally because of the great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness. The great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness was an expert in poison arts. Many of the great figures of the demon race had died tragically from his poison. Finally, when dealing with the desolate demons, he also used poison, and even created the desolate poison. The great emperor of the eastern wilderness used the 5 elements as the foundation to protect himself and control all poisons. Everything he learned was recorded in the 5 poisons scripture. Everything on Emperor Island had been taken away by the descendants of the great emperor of the eastern wilderness. It was not surprising that Zhang Tian and the rest had poison arts. Unfortunately, I did not see the divine ability, 5-colored poison light. Zhang Tian and the rest might have been probing Chu Yang's actual strength, but Chu Yang also wanted to understand Zhun Wudao, as well as Zhun Tianqiu and the rest's methods through them. However, it was clear that they did not give him the chance. The 5-colored poison light was naturally inferior to the 5-colored divine light, but it was still extremely shocking. It was said that when the 5-colored poison light was swept out, those who were swept by it would either be corroded into black water or be poisoned to death. Very few people could escape. TSK, so what if you have more people? Along with Chu Yang's disdainful voice, he visualized his void assassin martial soul and disappeared. Bang bang bang. Then, all the attacks in a straight line in the void exploded. When they saw Chu Yang again, he had already appeared above the group of people. Slaughter seal. This was the legacy of the Deva bloodline of Elder Gold, and was meant to slaughter all living beings. Therefore, it was the perfect time to unleash it. Chu Yang was now filled with killing intent. He would not be polite to anyone who dared to make a move against him. These people clearly understood that they were all dissidents who had infiltrated the 5-element sect. If they were all killed, they would no longer be able to cause trouble in the dark. Who knew how much less trouble they would face? When the slaughter seal was unleashed, it was as if a hole had been torn open in the void. A golden torrent surged out, pouring down in torrents. However, it was not a torrent, but a torrent of weapons, a storm of weapons, sabers, spears, swords, halberds, hammers, rods, wheels, and so on. The sharp chi pierced through gold and cracked stone, whistling in the sky. Just the sharp whistling sound alone was enough to make people's scalp numb. Moreover, each of the weapons seemed to be alive, or were controlled by a powerful but invisible creature. Clang clang clang, poochie poochie, dense and continuous sounds of weapons, and the sound of ice blades piercing into flesh, were heard. As soon as the slaughter seal was unleashed, a lot of people screamed and fell down instantly. Chapter 890. After the first wave of slaughter, the second wave of slaughter began. Among the crowd, a 6th-level ascending soul realm cultivator was smashed by a sledgehammer. His arm exploded, and the violent energy on it swept up, causing his shoulder to explode. He let out a series of miserable cries as if he had encountered a fierce ghost. His expression was distorted, and in the end, he hugged his head and rolled on the ground. The weapons formed by the slaughter seal all contained the intent to slay the soul. This was a double attack. Not only did it kill the body, but it also killed the soul. The sword and saber martial spirits were weapons, and they were a perfect match for the slaughter seal. The sword and saber martial spirits contained the intent to slay the soul, and they complemented each other with the slaughter intent of the slaughter seal. When combined, the power would increase greatly. Since Chu Yang's killing intent had been aroused, he naturally did not hold back. When he used the slaughter seal, he also used the sword and saber martial spirits. Damn it! Zhun Tian and the 5 poison men saw the screams around them. Their own people fell one by one, and the ground was dyed red with blood. Their eyes were also blood red. These people, every one of them who infiltrated the 5-element sect, were carefully planned, and there were almost no flaws. Although Zhun Tian did not care about their lives, they were his property. Every death was a great loss. Now, hundreds of people had died in an instant. Zhun Tian's heart was bleeding. Kill this murderous demon. Brothers and sisters of the 5-element sect, this demon is wantonly killing. Are you not going to make a move? Boom. On one side, Zhun Tian and the 5 poison men gathered people and roared together, pouncing toward Chu Yang. Among the 5 poison men, the green-skinned poison man took the lead. With a whoosh, he took out a green-colored ghost head broadsword. With a slight shake, that green-colored ghost head broadsword flowed on the blade. The sharp qi also turned green. Waves of blade qi carrying the poison qi continuously chopped down. 5 poison green poison saber. He was the first to approach Chu Yang. His eyes emitted a green light, and he slashed down. The saber light changed, and the light was blurred, completely enveloping Chu Yang. Humph! Chu Yang coldly snorted. He didn't even look at the saber light that was coming at him. He grabbed and slapped the saber, breaking it into pieces. Puff! This poison man vomited blood from the tremendous force transmitted from the saber, his bones breaking inch by inch. Chu Yang activated the 1,000 lights 10,000 shadows art. With a flick of his finger, a black ray of light shot out. Ah! The green poison man had no way of dodging at all as the bullet pierced right through his heart. He let out a blood-curdling scream before everyone saw his chest explode as blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Go to hell! Zhang Zhongtian and the 4 poison men's attacks had arrived and they all launched their attacks at Chu Yang, intending to kill him in one strike. At the same time, many people also gathered their spiritual qi and condensed it into a mountain with 5 colors. It was a mountain of poison, and as soon as it appeared, sizzling sounds rang out. Black smoke roiled, and the void seemed to be on the verge of being corroded. Good, good, good. All of you gather in one place, so that I don't have to kill you one by one. Chu Yang pierced into the void like a javelin. With a screech, a devil bird appeared behind him. Rolling black gas curled up around it. The devil bird rushed out and covered the sky. It was as if a black curtain had shrouded the sky. Chapter 891. How is this possible? Let's not talk about how he was able to block all of our attacks so easily. Even a spirit stage martial artist would be wary of the poison gas. Why couldn't it do anything to his demonic bird? What's going on? Could it be that he isn't human? Is he really a demon? It must be an illusion. It must be an illusion. With such an outcome, Zhang Zhongtian and the 4 poison men could not help but be shocked. Previously, they had heard that Chu Yang was ferocious, but they did not know how ferocious he was. Only now did they truly feel it. With so many of them working together, Chu Yang was able to easily defend against them. That demon bird is a desolate demon. Desolate demons are not afraid of poison, which is why it is like this. In his shock, the yellow-skinned poison man suddenly understood why Chu Yang was not afraid of poison. The desolate demons had fought with the Eastern Wilderness Great Emperor for an unknown period of time. They had long become immune to the various poisons of the Eastern Wilderness Great Emperor. He obtained the soul of the desolate demon prince and understood the secrets of the desolate demons. 5 poison bullet. Black poison took advantage of the fact that Chu Yang wasn't paying attention while everyone was crying out in alarm. He suddenly threw a 5-colored pellet towards Chu Yang. Rumble. There was an instant explosion, and a multicolored mushroom cloud rose up. Within 1,000 steps, the color of the ground changed, especially at the center of the explosion. The ground was corroded into a swamp, and multicolored bubbles continuously emerged. This was a great killing move. It was originally used by the Eastern Wilderness Great Emperor to deal with the desolate demons. Little bastard, let's see if you can survive this. I don't believe that you are stronger than a desolate demon. The black poison man gritted his teeth and laughed sinisterly. Zhang Zhongtian and the others could not help but stop their attacks. Looking at the swamp with billowing poison gas, everyone let out a sigh of relief. Even if he doesn't die from the explosion, he should be poisoned to death. Little brother. In the crowd, Chu Na had already cried out. Cao Ju and the others narrowed their eyes. The parrot's eyes rolled around as it thought to itself, how immoral. If he can be killed, wouldn't that mean I, the divine bird, will be free? H. The Chu Yang whose name has shaken the Eastern Wilderness is nothing more than this. The 4 poison men could not help but laugh out loud. Zhang Zhongtian also laughed. Really? Is that all I've got? A cold voice came out from the rolling poisonous gas. Who else could it be but Chu Yang's voice? The sound of wind suddenly rang out, and then the 5-colored poisonous gas rolled back like a cloud of arrows, rolling like waves. Not good. By the time Zhang Zhongtian realized that something was wrong, It was already too late. The multicolored poisonous gas swept over, and the people on his side fell down in an instant. They were twitching in pain and foaming at the mouth. It didn't take long for the poisonous gas to reach their hearts and kill them directly. In the end, there were only 5 people left, Junjon Tian and the 4 poison men. The 5 of them were not afraid of the poison, but the others were. There were nearly 2,000 people besieging Chuyang, and excluding the few hundred that were killed, there were nearly 1,000 that had died. The number that had died from the poison was much more than the number that had been killed by Chuyang. This poison is not bad, I'll give you all a thumbs up. Chuyang said coldly. He had nearly been hit just now. If he had not devoured the desolate demon's essence, he would have obtained the desolate demon's resistance to poison. He might have been in real danger. Da. He walked over step by step, and there were less than 100 people left on Junjon Tian's side. When everyone saw this scene, they shuddered. What a terrifying poison. Junjon Tian was already trembling. Before he could finish his sentence, Chuyang had already rushed over, giving him a sudden shock. He thought that he was definitely going to die. Then, with a bang, he looked over and was surprised to see that the black poison man who had thrown the 5 poison bomb had fallen to the ground. There was a tiny red dot in between his eyebrows. Junjon Tian did not understand how Chuyang had killed the black poison man, but he soon knew. A bullet had pierced through the back of his head. I died, just like that. Bang! Junjon Tian's eyes were wide open. His body stiffened as he fell to the ground, dying with his eyes wide open. Young master! The remaining 3 poison men exclaimed. They then looked at Chuyang. You actually killed the young master. Don't you know that he is the son of the sect master? Don't you know the consequences? Chapter 892. The moment that Chuyang had killed Junjon Tian, Chuene's heart had leapt right out of her throat. Cao Ju, Jin Duo, and the Silver Wolf were also stunned. Chuyang, this lunatic, has actually killed the sect leader's son? Did he not think before doing things, doing whatever he wanted to do? They no longer knew what to say. Before the 5 Elements sect leader had determined him to be a renegade, Chuyang's actions were simply too rash. The entire place was silent. The 5 Elements sect's people were all shocked beyond words. A genius like Chuyang had indeed killed many people in the fierce battle, but as long as he had not killed the sect leader's son, everything could still be salvaged. But if he had killed the sect leader's son, then between him and the 5 Elements sect leader, only one could survive. TCH, your expressions are just too laughable, Chuyang said disdainfully. Junjon Tian wanted to kill me, so why can't I kill him? Forget about the sect leader's son. Even if it was the sect leader, if he wanted to kill me, I would kill him all the same. Even the sect leader would be killed. Such words caused everyone present to be greatly shocked as they thought to themselves, this Chuyang is truly audacious and lawless. You 3 poison humans can die for me as well. Chuyang's hands did not stop as he directly killed the remaining 3 poison humans. White poison battle armor, yellow poison battle armor, red poison battle armor. The 3 poison men suddenly panicked and the spirit chi on their bodies rose up to form a suit of battle armor around their bodies, protecting their vitals. Though the 3 battle armors were of different colors, their designs were all the same. The bone spikes on the surface were ferocious as poisonous gas surged. It was an armor formed from highly poisonous spirit chi. Not only did this highly poisonous battle armor have great defense, it also emitted highly poisonous spirit chi. In the midst of a fight, if one was not careful, they would inhale the poisonous gas. If that happened, the consequences would be unthinkable. Generally speaking, most people would not dare to get close to them. Let's fight this demon to the death. The red poison humans roared wildly. However, just as he finished speaking, Chuyang had already arrived in front of him. He conjured up layers of palm shadows and slapped the top of his head, directly smashing his head into his chest. How is this possible? I actually died in such a manner? That was Red Venom's last thought. He used his armor to protect his vitals, guarding against Chuyang's bullet string. But in the end, Chu Yang didn't use any bullet string at all and killed him with a simple slap. You want to kill me, right? All of you can die too. Bang bang bang. Chu Yang struck again and again, and the remaining 2 poison men were all dead. Among the 2,000 over people, the remaining 100 or so were scared out of their wits as they fled for their lives. Chu Yang did not chase after them. These people were no longer a threat. However, these people who were running away were all suddenly stopped in their tracks. Why are you running away? A man shrouded in mist appeared out of thin air. No one knew when he had appeared. Seeing this person, Chu Na, Cao Ju, and the others narrowed their eyes. Cao Rong, Sui Yunfu, and Long Face on the 2 round platforms also narrowed their eyes. In an instant, everyone's eyes fell on this person, the Peak Master of Wu Peak, Yu Jiarong. Yu Jiarong looked coldly at Chu Yang and said coldly, even the sect master must be killed. This person is lawless and is no different from an evil demon. No matter how talented he is, it's useless. He must be killed as a warning to others. That's right. Rumble. At the same time, thunder rumbled in the sky. As the world shook, a middle-aged man with the mouth of a thunder god flew down from the sky. His eyes were burning with killing intent as he said coldly, this person is reckless and unruly. If we don't kill him, our 5 Elements sect will be no different from the Devil sect. Chapter 893. How can we convince the public if we don't kill him? The sect master's son is only one of the reasons. Nearly 2,000 disciples have died. We need to give them justice and an explanation. Freedom is relative. Freedom without any restrictions is destruction. This kid has already turned into a demon. If we don't get rid of him, he will bring disaster to the world. The Earth Element Peak's Peak Master Dongfang Hu, the Fire Element Peak Master Song Yangyang, the Medicine Peak Master Mu Hongyi, the White Tiger Peak, the Giant Peak, and the other Peak Masters who were in charge of hosting the successor competition this time. All the Peak Masters of the 5 inner peaks of the 5 Element sect had appeared at this moment. Apart from the 15 Peak Masters, the elders of the 5 Element sect were present as well. Du Guangguang, come here. Junior Sister Leng, don't get involved in this. Long Face and Sui Yunfu spoke one after another, calling Du Guangbua of Thousands Word Peak and Lung Lingdai of Lotus Peak over. Behind him, Cao Rong also spoke out, everyone from the Wood Element Peak, listen up. Come to me. Led by the Peak Masters and Elders of the 5 Elements sect, the disciples of the 5 Elements sect were divided into 2 camps. One camp was led by Song Yangyang, Lu Tianrue, by Sansi, Yu Jiarong, and the others. The other camp was led by Cao Rong, Sui Yunfu, Long Face, Du Guangbua, and Lung Lingdai. The disciples under their control quickly separated from each other. In an instant, the scene was chaotic, but orderly. In an instant, Song Yangyang, Lu Tianrue, Yu Jiarong, and the others gathered together with the disciples of the 5 Elements sect. The atmosphere was extremely tense as the 2 sides confronted each other. Many disciples of the 5 Elements sect could hardly breathe. 2 old men who were hiding in the dark saw this scene. One of the old men said, "This is great. Almost half of the 5 Elements sect is targeting this brat. I would like to see how this brat will deal with it. If he can deal with it easily, there's no need to hesitate." That's right. Jun Tiancho should be convinced now. The 2 old men were talking about Chu Yang and Jun Tiancho, the sect master of the 5 Elements sect. However, they didn't know their true intentions. Yu Jiarong, the Peak Master of Mist Peak, glared at Sui Yunfu and the others. Sui Yunfu, what are you doing? Are you trying to split the 5 Elements sect? Fire Element Peak Lord Song Yangyang also stared coldly at Cao Rong and said coldly, Cao Rong, your son Cao Ju and Chu Yang are close friends. But in the face of righteousness, you still want to be biased. You are planning to become a sinner of the 5 Elements sect. Song Yangyang, Lu Tianrue, Bai Sansi, and Dongfang who were the Peak Masters of the 5 inner peaks. Their words carried more weight than Cao Ju and the others. Cao Rong snorted coldly and said, I was just about to ask you this. What is the meaning of this? Do you think that not enough of the 5 Elements sect's disciples have died? Do you still want to send the Five Elements sect's disciples to their deaths? Ridiculous. Earth Peak Master Dongfang who sneered, it's just Chu Yang. Even if he's made of iron, how many nails can he crush? Are you blind? Cao Rong pointed at the corpses on the ground. How many nails did he crush just now? After saying that, Cao Rong said in a clear voice, disciples of the Five Elements sect, listen up. Whether Chu Yang is an evil spirit or not, and how to punish him, will be decided by the Sovereign, the Supreme Elder, the Golden Elder, and the Adjudicating Elder. Don't get involved in this matter. After a pause, he continued, those who cherish their lives and don't want to die, come to me. Whoosh. Cao Rong leaped into the air, arriving at the neutral ground in an instant. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Chapter 894. Rumble. The Five Elements sect disciples who were about to move suddenly stopped when they heard the majestic sound of thunder. Then, they saw the Peak Master of Sky Thunder Peak, Yu Jingfu, fly into a rage. Lightning flashed around him as he pointed at Sui Yunfu and the others. Sui Yunfu, what is the meaning of this? Are you really going to be stubborn and insist on helping a homicidal maniac? Sui Yunfu's expression was cold as he looked at the Five Elements sect disciples. Yu Jingfu, I also want to ask you what is the meaning of this. Are you planning to use these Five Elements sect disciples as cannon fodder and send them to their deaths to pave the way for you? Let me ask you again, Yu Jingfu. Since you don't have the confidence to kill Chu Yang, why are you acting rashly? What is your intention? Acting rashly? Yu Jingfu sneered. He's just a little devil. So what if he's monstrous? How can he be a match for us? Sui Yunfu looked at Yu Jingfu coldly. Since you're confident, what does it have to do with you if I let the disciples come to my side? Indeed, it doesn't matter. Song Yangyang sneered. Sui Yunfu, we still don't know what you're thinking. You just want to use this righteous method to help that little devil. At this moment, an impatient voice intervened. Can you guys debate another time? Chu Yang. Everyone's pupils shrank involuntarily. Chu Yang was still acting like this at this time? Chu Na almost fainted when she heard this. She wanted nothing more than to tear off Chu Yang's 2 ears. That bastard Chu is indeed the bastard Chu. No one can be as arrogant as him in the entire eastern wilderness. Cao Ju, Silver Wolf, and the others had completely lost their temper. The parrot was originally watching Chu Yang being besieged by the Five Elements sect. The parrot was almost scared out of its wits when it saw so many people. After hearing Chu Yang's words and tone, it was completely convinced. He is indeed worthy of being called an awesome person who cut off its 2 wings. Most people could only cut off 2 of its wings, but they would never let it roast its own parrot wings. Ah! Chu Yang let out a long yawn. While stretching, he said, you're making me sleepy. All right, I'll be the judge for all of you. All of you, go. Everyone's eyes bulged. Chu Yang was simply indescribable. They're all just rotten eggs and rotten sweet potatoes. Chu Yang looked at the vast number of people from the Five Elements sect and laughed evilly. However, you stinky sweet potatoes and rotten bird eggs still have some use. 1 person against 1 sect, I haven't tried it yet. I reckon I can create another record and create a legend, beautiful, truly beautiful. Cao Rong, Sui Yunfu, and the others wanted to go over and tear that little bastard Chu Yang into pieces. He was too heartless. However, instead of rebuking Chu Yang, they were rebuked by Chu Yang. Goat. Sloppy king. Du Guang Guang. Chu Yang pointed at them one by one. When it came to Cao Rong, Cao Ju's father, he said, then, the father of a certain idiot, all of you can come together. Otherwise, future generations will say that my record is exaggerated and not intimidating enough. Now, he was actually thinking about this matter. Many people from the Five Elements sect finally saw how unreliable Chu Yang was in the rumors. As for Sui Yunfu, Long Face, Du Guanghua, and Cao Rong, they were completely speechless. They couldn't even be angry. They had never met such a bastard before. Moreover, this bastard didn't seem to have eyes. There were at least a few 100,000 people from the Five Elements sect in the Second Circle Secret Realm. Could it be that this little bastard didn't feel any pressure at all? Chapter 895. HMPH, do you really think you're invincible? Yu Jingfu's voice rang out again. Chu Yang glared at him. You bastard, where did you get the confidence to say that to this young master? Many people were confused. This should be Yu Jingfu questioning you. Where did you get the confidence to boast shamelessly in front of so many people? Killing all the elders of a sect, it's not like I haven't done this before. Chu Yang looked at Yu Jingfu with disdain. Fellow rats, please be mentally prepared. Chu Yang really didn't expect the Five Elements sect to be infiltrated to such an extent. Killing all the elders of a sect? Lu Tianrui mocked. Bastard, do you have the ability to do so? You were only able to kill so many elders of the Soul Devourer clan because you borrowed the souls of millions to trigger the Red Lotus karmic fire. Hee hee. Chu Yang laughed mockingly. Do you think you can trigger the Red Lotus karmic fire just because you want to? If he didn't have the genius martial spirit and the idiot martial spirit, he would have been a dead man. As for now, his two martial spirits had turned into the divine demon martial spirits, and he had completed the third soul evolution. Of course, he was no longer the same person as before. Besides, even if the peak masters and elders of the Five Elements sect worked together and he was no match for them, who could stop him if he wanted to leave? With his speed, who in the Five Elements sect could catch up to him? What are you laughing at? Chu Yang's chuckle was too mocking. Lu Tianrui couldn't help but shout out in anger. The peak master of the water element peak, Lu Tianrui, right? Chu Yang looked at Lu Tianrui. You were like a chicken in my hands just now. What do you think I'm laughing at? Bastard, you just launched a sneak attack? Blood rushed to Lu Tianrui's face. This was a great humiliation to him. Bai Sansi also felt humiliated. Chu Yang was looking down on Lu Tianrui, which was the same as looking down on him. Previously, he and Lu Tianrui couldn't fight back in front of Chu Yang, losing all face. Sneak attack. Chu Yang was amused. He crooked his finger at Lu Tianrui and said, "Come here. I'll give you a chance to experience my terror. Don't worry. Even if you make a move, you'll lose. I won't take your life later. I guarantee it with my integrity." As he spoke, Chu Yang raised one of his hands and waved it at Lu Tianrui. Do you see this hand of mine? I'll give you 3 moves later, and you can use your full strength. After 3 moves, this hand of mine will send you flying with a single slap. Bai Sansi, Lu Tianrui, and the others were at the same level as the many elders of the Soul Devourer clan. Most of them were at the 9th level of the Soul Reincarnation realm, and none of them were at the Spirit realm. Thus, Chu Yang didn't put them in his eyes at all. Who was Lu Tianrui? The peak master of the Five Elements sect's water element peak. He had broken through to the Soul Reincarnation realm a long time ago and had been in charge of the water element peak for over a dozen years. Which one of them didn't give him face? When had he ever been looked down upon like this? Not only did Lu Tianrui promise not to kill him, Lu Tianrui even gave him 3 moves, but Lu Tianrui even predicted which hand he would use to send him flying. What a bully! Killing intent flashed through Lu Tianrui's eyes. With a boom, his body exploded and water spiritual energy soared into the sky. Suddenly, he pointed out with his finger and the spiritual energy turned into an icy sword aura. It went straight for Chu Yang's heart. Although it was just a point, the spiritual energy instantly turned into an icy sword. The sword aura overflowed. As the icy sword aura exploded, sword images appeared everywhere. With a point of his finger, it enveloped the entire area. Chapter 896. Before it arrived, there were ice shards falling from the sky. Mist curled up and completely covered the sacred ice sword. It made the sacred ice sword look like an assassin hiding in the mist. Bang! Chu Yang did not move. The sacred ice sword pierced through him and exploded the air. However, that was only Chu Yang's illusion. At this moment, Chu Yang had already appeared on Lu Tianrui's left. No one saw how he dodged, and no one knew how he arrived on Lu Tianrui's left. Song Yang, Bai Sansi, Dongfang Hu, and the others couldn't help but frown. Lu Tianrui, this is the first move. I'll take the initiative to come to your left so that you can use the second move to your heart's content. Otherwise, You'll say that I bullied you. Chu Yang was calm and composed. Bastard, how dare you look down on me and humiliate me? Lu Tianrui's face was ferocious. He quickly formed a seal with his hands, forming a huge crystal-clear ice lotus. As soon as the ice lotus appeared, the surrounding temperature plummeted. It was as if the surrounding area was frozen. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The ice lotus suddenly spun, creating a sharp whistling sound. It directly slashed over and exploded with a rumble, creating a huge crater on the ground. However, there was no sign of Chu Yang at the crater. I'm on your right. No need to look. Chu Yang had unknowingly appeared on Lu Tianrui's right. Ice Dragon Heart Gouging Claw. Lu Tianrui didn't even think and pounced over. His hand formed a claw, and the spiritual energy on his sharp nails formed a long hook. He was going to dig out Chu Yang's heart. However, he missed again. Chu Yang took another step forward. Trash, 3 moves have passed. I'm going to attack. Lu Tianrui, pay attention to your right face. Chu Yang's voice sounded again. Bastard. Lu Tianrui roared and did not dodge. He threw a punch forward. It was so heavy that it rumbled in the air. A lake appeared on his fist. The lake seemed to be real, and the waves were clear and crystalline. Suddenly, an ice dragon rushed out from the lake, bringing with it a huge wave. Lake Martial Spirit. Lake Martial Spirit, and a dragon is hidden in the lake. It was as if a real lake had crashed into it. Many people's eyes widened when they saw the lake. Many people knew that Lu Tianrui had a lake martial spirit. Before Chu Yang left the 5 Elements sect, Cao Ju made a bet with Lu Tianrui and obtained the martial spirit visualization diagram of Lu Tianrui's lake. There were probably not many people in the 5 Elements sect who did not know about this. Lake martial spirit, this must be your strongest move. This is the best. As Chu Yang spoke, he raised his hand and slapped out. With a swing of the palm, everyone felt a gust of wind blow past them. Everyone saw a huge whirlpool appear in the void, but the whirlpool had already been thrown behind a huge palm. Ah! A blood-curdling scream. The ice dragon instantly exploded, and so did the lake. Wah! Amidst the loud rumbling, Lu Tianrui flew out and rolled on the ground. His face was completely swollen. He used all his strength to attack, but Chu Yang simply raised his hand and slapped him. Trash. Chu Yang looked down at Lu Tianrui, who was knocked to the ground by his slap. Was that a sneak attack? You can't even take a slap from me. You're not worthy of my sneak attack. You. Lu Tianrui was ashamed and angry. He still could not believe that he was defeated like this, but the piercing pain on his face had yet to recede. Don't be too agitated. This is normal, so you don't have to feel ashamed to live, and you don't have to commit suicide. Chu Yang's serious expression made many people speechless again. But for Cao Ju and the others, it was very familiar. This was very Chu Yang. Chapter 897. Fart. The parrot looked at him in disdain. He couldn't accept such a blow. This divine bird had experienced worse. Little bastard, go to hell. Just as Chu Yang was feeling complacent and careless, Bai Sansi made his move. White Tiger Gung Metal Slash. His Gung Metal spiritual energy burst out violently. Suddenly, the cold light was extremely dazzling. The world was so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. The extremely sharp Gung Metal spiritual energy turned into a white tiger and bit down on Chu Yang's head. This attack was unexpected and had been planned for a long time. It was like a peerless assassin's peerless attack. It would either succeed or die. No one expected that there would be such a sudden move, so no one reacted. Chu Yang, you bastard. When Cao Ju and the others shouted to remind him, it was already too late. Cao Rong, Sui Yunfu, and the others didn't expect it and didn't react. However, Song Yang, Yu Jingfu, and the others were already laughing. He was so proud and arrogant that he wouldn't even know how he died. He really didn't know what to do. Rumble. The white tiger formed by the power of Gung Metal pounced down and bit down on Chu Yang's entire head. It also bit down on the air, causing a loud noise and a huge ripple in the void. At this time, everyone only saw that the white tiger formed by Sansi's gung metal spiritual energy was biting down on Chu Yang's loneliness and emptiness. It was just an illusion. Sneak attack. You're playing a sneak attack in front of me. Don't you know that I'm the expert and professor in this field? You actually want to teach me a lesson? Are you out of your mind? The voice came from the void. Then, Chu Yang appeared. He raised his hand and slapped the old man's face. Buzz. Sansi immediately released his domain, but his domain was like a piece of paper in front of Chu Yang. It was directly penetrated by Chu Yang's palm and slapped hard on his face. In an instant, Sansi felt as if he had been hit by a mountain. His head was almost spun like a top, and his neck was almost broken. All the teeth in his mouth flew out. While he was still flying in the air, Chu Yang had already caught up with him. He kept moving at high speed and slapped Sansi's face. Sneak attack. Sneak attack. Sneak attack. If I don't teach you how to write these words today, there will be a stain on my life. Bang. Sansi finally landed on the ground. His entire body was in intense pain, but he felt that he was free. If he continued to be slapped like this, he was afraid that he would be slapped to death. Bang. Chu Yang stepped on his lower abdomen. He was in so much pain that his body arched like a bow. Why are you so useless? It's fine if you can't take a slap, but your face is so fragile. I just slapped you a few times, and your face is almost dead. Everyone was immediately dumbfounded. They had never seen someone like Chu Yang. He was about to fan death to death, yet he still complained that the other party was impatient. Bastard, you, at this moment, Sansi was injured, and his heart was even more hurt. He was extremely humiliated. However, he was even more shocked. Why was Chu Yang so terrifying? Just a mere slap was enough to send him flying. In fact, he couldn't even see what kind of technique Chu Yang had used. Are you surprised? Why is my slap so powerful? Chu Yang said loudly, I'll tell you in a low voice. This is called the palm divine technique. It's used to slap people. I've always relied on this palm divine technique to roam the martial world. I swept across the East Baron. Palm divine art. Cao Ju and the others were speechless again. They were too familiar with such ridicule. Anyone who knew Chu Yang would know that he was the kind of person who would bully others until they wanted to die. The parrot felt it the most. It commented, "This is child's play. Little bastard." Chu Yang grabbed Sansi and threw him to the parrot. He said, "Teach this thing how to write these words. Show off your broadsword in front of Master Guan." The hairless parrot immediately became the focus of the crowd. The parrot was very depressed. This was not what it wanted. If Chu Yang died, it would die too, and that would attract too much hatred. All right. It could only shout happily. My lord is wise. I'm the best at this. Chu Yang. At this moment, a deep voice was heard. It was like muffled thunder, filled with supreme majesty and intimidating. Everyone who heard it could not help but be frightened, and their bodies stiffened. Chapter 898. Jun Wudao, you're finally willing to come out. I thought that you would be a coward for the rest of your life. As Chu Yang spoke with disdain, Jun Wudao finally appeared. He came from the outside of the second circle secret realm as if he had descended from the heavens. The void fluctuated as if time and space were making way for him, making him look like a god that had descended from the heavens. Although the spacetime fluctuation wasn't caused by Jun Wudao, but by the spacetime transmission gate, it still made everyone feel suffocated. Thump, 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 thump. Within the second circle secret realm, the hearts of many five-element sect's disciples couldn't help but jump. They didn't know if it was because of nervousness, excitement, worship, or something else. At this moment, even they themselves didn't know. Jun Wudao. Jun Wudao had finally appeared. The god's child of the five-element sect made people feel suffocated. He was an existence that was high above. The person that the five-element sect's disciples usually saw was him. This was his real body. Previously, he had appeared once because of Chu Yang. Many of the five-element sect's disciples already knew that he had shockingly broken through to the spirit stage and even reached the third level of the spirit stage. He wasn't someone that ordinary people could compare to. Even many of the peak masters and elders of the five-element sect were inferior to him. If it wasn't for Chu Yang's appearance, there was no doubt that he would be the next sect master of the five-element sect. No one could go against this. This was a person that could take charge of the entire five-element sect. A supreme genius. Although he was still far away, Chu Yang could feel a great pressure pressing down on him. It was as if a mountain range was crashing down on him one after another. If it wasn't for Chu Yang, anyone else would have already vomited blood and knelt down. However, such a pressure was nothing more than a gust of wind to Chu Yang. Buzz! A loud sound rang out. Jun Wudao appeared in front of everyone and revealed his figure. He was a 22-year-old young man with an extraordinary temperament. His face was extremely pale and sickly pale. His features were chiseled, and at this moment, he looked like a heavenly god, like a heavenly pillar propping up the dome of heaven. His aura and the pressure he emanated caused others to prostrate themselves on the ground and prostrate themselves in worship. When Chu Yang saw Jun Wudao again, it had been less than 7 days, but he could feel that Jun Wudao's aura was much stronger than before. He was improving, and so was Jun Wudao. This is a great enemy. The leisurely look on Chu Yang's face disappeared, and countless rays of light burst forth from his eyes. His back was straight, and his hands were behind his back. It was as if there was a peerless divine spear hidden in his body. At this moment, it revealed its sharpness, as if even the blue sky would be pierced by him. So strong, so strong. These two are so strong. They are like the gods of the immemorial divine mountain. Jun Wudao and Chu Yang's aura were equally matched, but many of the five-element sect's disciples couldn't bear it. They were struggling to hold on, and some of them were on the verge of collapse. Jun Wudao fell on the opposite side of Chu Yang and confronted Chu Yang. He suddenly stared at Chu Yang with vicious and ferocious eyes. Around his body, a huge amount of five-element spiritual qi was circulating and penetrating into the void. It seemed that every spiritual qi was a divine bridge, allowing him to integrate with heaven and earth. Chapter 899. Rumble. The sound was like thunder, like the heavens, oppressing Chu Yang. The people present did not know what was going on with Chu Yang. What they knew was that at this moment, they only felt that they had committed a great sin. They only felt that they deserved to die, and their hearts were incomparably terrified. Humph! Chu Yang fiercely waved his hand, like driving away a fly, and the oppressive pressure from Jun Wudao disappeared. His eyes were like two javelins, staring at Jun Wudao. Jun Wudao, put away these little tricks. You can only use them to bully some weak chickens. Do you think this is useful against me? His voice was filled with disdain, and even a trace of laziness, spreading throughout the whole place. Countless disciples of the five-element sect heard Chu Yang's voice, and each of them smiled bitterly in their hearts. It seems that I can only be a weak chicken in front of people like Chu Yang and Jun Wudao, or even worse, they can kill me with a raise of their hand. Cao Ju, Sui Yunfu, Long Face, Bai Sansi, Lu Tianrue, Dongfang Hu, Song Yang, and others, at this time, did not dare to say anything, and did not dare to be presumptuous. They did not dare to intervene between the two. Chu Yang and Jun Wudao were already out of their control. At this time, Cao Ju, Silver Wolf, Jin Duo, and the others also looked at the two without blinking. As for the parrot now, it did not dare to make a sound. Arrogance depends on the person. Jun Wudao in front of it obviously could not be presumptuous in front of him, otherwise, it would be death. Of course, this was even more so for a wicked bastard like Chu Yang. If it dared to be presumptuous, it must be because of Chu Yang. In the parrot's view, Chu Yang was far more terrifying than Jun Wudao, and it already knew who would win and who would lose. It was definitely Chu Yang. However, it did not have any basis, and only relied on its own feelings. In the face of Chu Yang's disdain, Jun Wudao did not immediately refute. His eyes became sharper, like a sword, as if he wanted to see through Chu Yang. The battle here is not important. It doesn't matter if I win, it doesn't matter if I lose. The one who will decide who will be the master of the Eastern Wilderness is not me, but you. If you can beat Chu Yang, then you will be the master of the Eastern Wilderness, and the entire Eastern Wilderness will be ours. But if you lose, everything. This was what Jun Wudao's uncle. Jun Wudao's eldest uncle was the sect master of the Five Elements sect, Jun Tianqiu. Her second uncle was the sect master of the Soul Devourer sect, Jun Tianhen. Her father was the sect master of the Thousand Devil sect. His second uncle's and father's names were fake names. These were their real names. Originally, Jun Tianqiu's three fathers had different opinions on how to deal with Chu Yang. Jun Tianqiu's uncle wanted to kill Chu Yang, unify the Eastern Wilderness, and enslave the entire Eastern Wilderness. Then, the Eastern Wilderness would be infuriated, and a savior would appear, who would be revered by the people of the Eastern Wilderness. Jun Tianqiu's plan was to kill Chu Yang, unify the Eastern Wilderness, and then change his identity, overthrow his own dynasty, and establish a new one. Jun Wudao's father and uncle wanted to subdue Chu Yang, unify the Eastern Wilderness, and use Chu Yang's revered status to promote themselves. For example, Chu Yang was only their servant, and Chu Yang's actions were all ordered by them. In this way, they would also gain the respect of the entire Eastern Wilderness. No matter which option they chose, they would have to change their identities. As for their identities, they didn't care. For example, their current surname wasn't their original surname. It was only because the great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness had ascended to the throne of the Eastern Wilderness that they took Jun as their surname. Jun Wudao's original surname was Chu, just like Chu Yang's. He knew this, but he didn't know that there was a council of elders in their clan. What was even more unexpected to him was that the former sect leader of the Five Elements sect, who was supposed to be dead, and the four emperors of the four kingdoms, who were either dead or missing, would suddenly jump out at the same time. Chapter 900. At that moment, Jun Wudao's three fathers were fighting in a secret subdimension of the Jun family. The Grand Elder, the Gold Elder, the Judiciary Elder, the Seven Stars sect, the Longhu sect, and even the demon race were all involved in the fight. If that was all, the demon race was already under their control. However, the Elders' Council had suddenly appeared. The Council of Elders made everything confusing, especially when the Council of Elders had clearly told his three fathers something, and now it had turned out this way. The Jun family had planned for generations, and whether they could unify the Eastern Wilderness and dominate the Eastern Wilderness depended on whether he could defeat Chu Yang in today's battle. What virtue and ability did Chu Yang have? What right did he have to steal the planning and hard work of several generations of their clan with just one battle? Jun Wudao didn't think that he couldn't defeat Chu Yang. He just felt that it was unfair. He wanted to see how strong this Chu Yang, who was valued by the Council of Elders, was and how amazing he was. Chu Yang, if you want to fight me, then let's see if you're qualified to fight me. Suddenly, Jun Wudao sneered, and with a rumbling sound, an enormous energy field erupted. His hand shot towards Chu Yang, and then he flipped it over. Suddenly, the space around him changed, and Chu Yang felt as if he were about to be flipped upside down. Spinning heaven and earth. Jun Wudao's hand was incomparably white and looked very soft, but it contained an indescribable power, an extremely terrifying power. With a flip of her hand, ripples spread out in all directions, as if the space above and below were about to be reversed. At that moment, Jun Wudao had an aura of dominating the world. In an instant, Chu Yang could feel the sharpness and powerful spiritual power emanating from his body. He also suddenly saw that the chi of heaven and earth around Jun Wudao was very complicated. He even saw the dangerous changes in the world. In the depths of the sky, there were countless vortexes that seemed like they could easily suck in a mountain. He also felt a powerful force erupting from Jun Wudao's body. As Jun Wudao breathed, Chu Yang watched as rays of sunlight entered him, transforming into warm vital energy that became part of his life force essence. At the same time, the world's essence followed Jun Wudao's breathing and entered his body, constantly washing away the impurities in his body. At every moment, Jun Wudao's body was spotless, both inside and outside. Without relying on all kinds of food, without relying on medicinal pills, Without eating the food of the mortal world, and by gathering the essence of the sun, the moon, and the essence of heaven and earth, one could maintain one's life. Is this the spirit stage? You're already completely otherworldly. The spirit realm was the formation of the spirit soul. A martial artist would have a divine bridge that connected them to the heavens and earth. They would be able to freely absorb the world's yuan qi. It was as if the heavens and earth were their own world, and they would be able to use the world's spirit qi without any restraints. This was equivalent to climbing up a tree, and they would be able to use the heavens to intimidate others. In this realm, not only would one be otherworldly, but they would also be able to see through the smallest details. They would even have a slight understanding of spacetime, and they would be able to absorb the energy of different dimensions. Spacetime could not be easily interfered with. Naturally, the spirit stage could not do so as well. In fact, they might not even be able to see the appearance of spacetime, but they would be able to see the big picture and see the big picture. Jun Wudao's heaven and earth spinning technique was similar to Chu Yang's sky flipping seal. The only difference was that Jun Wudao was using the advantage of his realm to bully Chu Yang. If Chu Yang couldn't even deal with this, then he naturally wouldn't be qualified to fight with Jun Wudao. Jun Wudao really wanted to try and see if Chu Yang was qualified to fight with him. Chapter 901. I've been completely underestimated. Chu Yang was too lazy to care about Jun Wudao's anger. He sneered, "Jun Wudao, you want to see if I have the qualifications to fight with you, right? Then open your eyes wide and take a good look." Wang. Ripples surged out from Chu Yang's forehead. His mental energy surged out and released into the world. Then, he spat out a word, "Freeze." Wang, Wang, Wang. An inexplicable power clashed and created ripples in the air. At the same time, Jun Wudao's feeling of the world turning upside down completely disappeared. At this moment, everyone only felt that Chu Yang and Jun Wudao were like two armies confronting each other. They were fighting over an important place of life and death. If one side occupied it, the other would immediately take it back. This cycle repeated endlessly until one side died. Wang, Wang, Wang. The ripples in the air became even larger. It sounded like the battle cries of the two armies. It also sounded like the blood of the two armies flowing into a river. Behind Jun Wudao, 3 divine bridges entered the void and connected her to the heaven and earth. Chu Yang's entire body seemed to be a big array. Every acupoint was an array seal. His internal organs were also array seals. His meridians and bones were array patterns. His entire body seemed to be a huge array seal. It was as if he was embedded in the void. If the entire world was Jun Wudao's paradise, then the entire world was Chu Yang's huge array. Rank 5 Array Master. A Rank 5 Array Master could fight against a Spirit Stage expert. With the help of an array, they could kill a Spirit Stage expert. Although there was no array, a Rank 5 Array Master like Chu Yang's understanding of the world was definitely not inferior to Jun Wudao. In fact, it was far superior to Jun Wudao. Therefore, even without the formation, it was impossible for Jun Wudao to suppress Chu Yang with the advantage of being at the spirit stage and the connection between the heavens and the earth. Rank 5 Array Master. This little bastard is already a Rank 5 Array Master. How is this possible? Long Face eyes bulged, and his mouth opened so wide that a rock could be stuffed in. He majored in formations, so he was the most sensitive to the fluctuations of formations. Therefore, he was the first person to see through what Chu Yang was relying on. At the same time, he was the one who was the most shocked. Even Long Face, an old man, had not reached the 5th tier Array Master level. How could he not be shocked when Chu Yang had already reached it? Long Face couldn't help but recall that in the Huanmo secret territory, Chu Yang had formed the heaven, earth, and man seals the first time he tried to form an array seal and fused the 3 seals together. Only then did he form various basic seals from top to bottom. For Chu Yang, the basic seal technique was not difficult at all. He did not need to learn it at all. Therefore, he knew very well how long Chu Yang had been studying array formations. From Long Face calculation, Chu Yang had only used half a year to become a Rank 5 Array Master. As for him, He was already old. He was about to die of old age, but he was only at the peak of a rank 4 array master. $. Long Face lost his composure and cursed loudly. God, aren't you being too biased? This little bastard has only been studying array formations for half a year, and is already a rank 5 array master. Can you be even more ridiculous? Chapter 902. The Five Elements sect disciples were stunned when they saw Long Face stomping his feet and cursing. They did not mock him because a level 5 array master was too shocking. Especially when they heard that Chu Yang had only used half a year to become a level 5 array master. This made their minds go blank. Sui Yunfu and Du Guangbo couldn't laugh either. If it was in the past, they would have laughed and looked down on Long Face. However, they understood Long Face's feelings too well right now. Long Face had painstakingly studied arrays and put all his thoughts on arrays. He had no time to care about other things. He was usually very sloppy and was called Sloppy Big Uncle by Chu Yang. However, he had not obtained what he had diligently sought, while Chu Yang had obtained it so easily. They could imagine how he felt. At this time, Bai Sansi and Lu Tianrue completely understood why they could not even take a slap from Chu Yang. Not to mention other things, just the fact that he was a level 5 array master was something they could not handle. Little brother is already a level 5 array master? Chu Na, who was in the crowd, was also shocked. She had never expected this. However, none of them knew about Chu Yang's experience, nor did they know that Chu Yang had the heaven-defying Destiny Twins martial spirits. With his powerful deduction ability, whether it was arrays or martial arts, it was too easy for Chu Yang. Fuck. The parrot was also cursing. This immoral son of a bitch has a trump card. I knew it. Look at this immoral son of a bitch. If he dares to be so arrogant, how can he not have some tricks up his sleeve? I can't rebel. I can't rebel even if I'm beaten to death. The parrot made up its mind and said, if I don't understand this immoral son of a bitch, I can't rebel even if you beat me to death. However, it suddenly thought of how easily Chu Yang had dealt with the desolate demons and the sea god on Emperor Island. With just a sleep, he had killed 2 big shots that the great emperor of the Eastern Wilderness had not been able to kill for so many years. Its thoughts of rebellion were completely extinguished. This immoral son of a bitch was an existence that made it despair. Jun Wudao, you can put away this little trick of yours. Chu Yang said scornfully, you don't have the ability to suppress me with just this. As for my ability, you've already seen it. Do I have the qualifications to teach you a lesson? You're just a level 5 array master. Chu Yang, you're just qualified to fight me. Jun Wudao was furious. You don't have the ability to teach me a lesson. Shua. As soon as he moved, the 5-colored spirit chi under his feet surged and exploded into a 5-colored light. When he moved, his body moved like lightning, and a 5-colored radiance flashed, as if a 5-colored god was flashing. Shua. Chu Yang also used the 5-element spirit chi, and his body also shone with a 5-colored radiance. He also looked like a 5-colored god. The two of them flashed repeatedly in mid-air, creating afterimages and countless afterimages. However, the strange thing was that the two of them did not exchange blows. Instead, it was as if the two of them were competing to see whose footwork was more dazzling and cool. 5 elements heaven ascending step. Almost at the same time, the peak masters and elders of the 5 elements sect instantly recognized Jun Wudao's footwork. This footwork was one of the 5 elements sect's secret techniques. At the very least, one needed to cultivate the various elements of the 5 elements and make them circulate in order to be able to use it. This footwork was naturally exquisite, and there were few footwork techniques in the Eastern Wilderness that could compare to it. Chapter 903. Chu Yang seems to be using the 5 elements heaven ascending steps as well. His 5 elements heaven ascending steps seems to be even more exquisite. Turning left instead of right, and turning right instead of left, it's very easy to confuse others and even cause them to feel a sense of confusion. What kind of footwork is that? It's definitely the 5 elements heaven ascending steps. However, This little bastard has made great improvements to the 5 elements heaven ascending steps and incorporated many of his own things into it. The sudden appearance of the aged voice caused the people from the 5 element sect to be stunned. When the others looked over, they were all dumbfounded. The one who spoke was the judiciary elder. At this moment, the hunchbacked judiciary elder narrowed his eyes and looked at Chu Yang like a deer stretching its neck. The judiciary elder wasn't the only one. When the judiciary elder suddenly appeared, many people couldn't help but exclaim, "Supreme Elder! Elder Jin! Sect leader!" This wasn't the most shocking thing for the 5 elements sect. They saw the resurrection of the dead. The 4 emperors of the 4 countries. Emperor Wei of Wei country. Emperor Wu of Wu country. Emperor Qi of Qi country. Emperor Han of Korea, old sect leader. Other than the 4 emperors of the 4 countries, there were many other people whose identities were unknown. However, all of them had powerful auras. When Yun Fu, Long Face, Cao Ju, and the others looked at one of them carefully, they couldn't help but exclaim. The 5 elements sect was shocked. Hadn't the previous sect leader of the 5 elements sect died many years ago? Everyone was shocked. Don't make a fuss over nothing. The previous sect leader of the 5 elements sect said, "I just saw 2 outstanding juniors and couldn't help but come out to take a look." His words dispelled the doubts in the hearts of the 5 elements sect disciples. The previous sect leader's death should be a cover. He just retired before he died. As for the others, the 5 elements sect disciples couldn't recognize them at all. Many of them were even wearing masks. They definitely didn't want to expose their identities. It could be said that those who were supposed to be here were all here. The 5 elements sect disciples couldn't help but feel relieved. With the previous sect leader of the 5 elements sect, the current sect leader, the Supreme Elder, and Elder Jin, it was impossible for anything uncontrollable to happen. At this moment, everyone calmed down and focused on the battle. However, they didn't know how many things had happened. They didn't know that both sides had stopped fighting and let Chu Yang and Jun Wudao decide the final result. Mysterious person, Supreme Elder, Gold Elder, and Judiciary Elder. The 4 emperors of the 4 countries. Uncle, second uncle, father. At the same time, Chu Yang and Jun Wudao couldn't help but be surprised. Jun Wudao knew the general process, but Chu Yang's face was full of confusion. Suddenly, all these big shots jumped out, and his mind was in a mess. His heart was full of questions, and it was like a dense cloud of fog. The 4 emperors of the 4 countries came back from the dead. This was still okay. After all, the mysterious person, the previous sect leader of the 5 elements sect, had reminded him vaguely. However, what was the situation in front of him? The 2 sides were so close that they didn't seem to want to fight at all. What the hell is going on? Chu Yang shouted in his heart. The former sect leader of the 5 elements sect saw that Chu Yang was confused and said, "Little bastard, focus. The victory or defeat depends on you. If you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. Just remember this." Bullshit. Chu Yang was depressed. Curiosity was like a cat scratching his heart. He secretly transmitted a message to the parrot, and the parrot immediately jumped out. Pew. The parrot pointed at the former sect leader of the 5 elements sect with its featherless wings and shouted, "That thing, how dare you make my master confused? You deserve to die 10,000 times. You'd better start from the beginning, or I'll give you the number 1 set meal. I'll strip you naked and hang you up to dry." Whoosh. With that, the parrot fled. It cursed in its heart, that wicked thing. What did he want this divine bird to do? That thing is an old antique, the former sect leader of the 5 elements sect. If he eats this divine bird won't even have a place to cry. Haha. The parrot's fleeing appearance was ridiculous. It was like a fox stroking a tiger's whiskers and then running away. There's no need to compete with the 5 elements heaven ascension steps. You're not as good as him. Jun Tiancho, the sect leader of the 5 elements sect, said in a thunderous voice. As soon as he spoke, Jun Wudao stopped in midair. Chapter 904. Who's stronger? Who's the strongest in the eastern wilderness? Chu Yang floated in the air like a cloud and said, I don't care who's the strongest in the eastern wilderness. I don't like that title, but if you want to know who's stronger, I can give you a clear answer. After a slight pause, Chu Yang shook his head at Jun Wudao and said, Jun Wudao, you're not strong enough. Then, he looked directly at Jun Tianchou, the sect master of the Five Elements sect, and said, to be honest, I've been thinking about how to kill this bastard since the beginning. Jun Tianchou, bastard? Chu Yang was going to kill Jun Tianchou of the Five Elements sect. At that moment, everyone present thought they had misheard. No wonder Chu Yang was so arrogant and even killed the sect master's son. Understanding was one thing. But, everyone was still incomparably shaken and shocked. Chu Yang was simply, they couldn't describe him. Words like arrogant or savage couldn't describe Chu Yang's current conduct. Chu Yang, how dare you? Lu Tianrui, Song Yangyang, Bai Sansi, and Dongfang, who were furious. Cao Ju, Sui Yunfu, Long Face, and the others were also stunned. Even Jun Tianchou, the sect master of the Five Elements sect, was stunned. What a big heart! The Supreme Elder, the Golden Elder, the Judgment Elder, and the former sect leader of the Five Elements sect shook their heads and smiled bitterly after recovering from their shock. It was obvious that this little bastard Chu Yang had never held any hope for them at all. The two old men who had been hiding in the dark could not help but laugh. This boy is too arrogant. If he doesn't have the ability to match him, the consequences will be unimaginable. Judging from his behavior, he's not a brainless person. It seems that he really has some tricks up his sleeve. If that is the case, then this child is extraordinary. Our decision can only be said to be wise. In the field, Jun Tianchou, the sect master of the Five Elements sect, was stunned for a moment before he said, Chu Yang, if you win against my Daolist sword, I will give you a chance to kill me. I will only attack and not defend. Let me see how strong you are. Ha ha. Chu Yang laughed out loud, sect leader, very good. Then wait for me. I promise to make your nephew accept his defeat wholeheartedly. Chu Yang, don't be so arrogant. Jun Wudao was so disregarded that her lungs were about to explode. Smoke seemed to be coming out of her 7 orifices. It's none of your business whether I'm savage or not. Chu Yang laughed and said, make your move, I'm still in a hurry to kill your uncle. Damn you. Jun Wudao trembled with anger. He was Jun Tianchou's nephew. Jun Tianchou wasn't necessarily his uncle. It was his uncle's fault. Such words were the greatest disrespect to him, as well as the greatest disdain and contempt. It's none of your business whether I deserve to die or not. Just make your move. I'm still in a hurry to go, so don't waste my time. Everyone was speechless at Chu Yang's behavior. As for Cao Ju and the others, they could only say that this was very Chu Yang. Die. Rumble. Jun Wudao punched out in fury. Using the 5 Elements Heaven Ascending Steps, 5-colored light flashed around her as she punched straight at Chu Yang. Instantly, heaven and earth rumbled. This punch contained water, frost, snow, ice, water vapor, and so on. It was as if this punch contained all of the elements of water, converging them into a single point. Chapter 905. Rumble. As the punch came, huge waves appeared in the void, one after another. The water was vast, as if it was a flood, as if the Milky Way was pouring down in torrents. It was also as if a corner of the world of water had been opened. Good. Chu Yang also punched out a fist. The water spiritual energy surged violently, and huge waves surged. The entire place was covered in a vast expanse of whiteness, and the sound of stormy waves was incessant. It was also a water fist. When the fist was thrown out, the river was like a dragon, rushing to the east. The lake was vast and misty. Although there was no ice or snow, it was more vast and broad. In front of the fist, there seemed to be a vast ocean. All rivers in the sea. Chu Yang had the River Marshal Spirit Visualization Diagram and the Lake Marshal Spirit Visualization Diagram. The Lake Marshal Spirit Visualization Diagram was one from the Peak Master of the Water Element Peak. At first glance, the crowd felt as if they had jumped out of the heavens and earth, overlooking the whole world and seeing countless rivers rushing to the sea. Not giving an inch to an all, meeting force with force. The pupils of Jun Tianqiu, the sovereign of the Five Elements sect, couldn't help but shrink. His nephew Jun Wudao had used the water element of the Five Elements, and Chu Yang had also used the water element to deal with it. It seemed that Chu Yang was deliberately trying to make his nephew Jun Wudao accept his defeat. It was a shocking sight. Jun Tianqiu was surprised when the two fists collided. Suddenly, there was a rumbling sound, as if two torrents had collided. A water column shot up to the sky. At the same time, endless mist filled the air, shrouding the two of them in an instant. The collision between the two of them caused a huge explosion of energy. The water spiritual energy was completely vaporized into white mist. In an instant, the mist filled the air and covered the surroundings. It completely blocked one's line of sight and covered the two of them. The next moment, it was as if a big fireball rose from the horizon, dispelling the fog. Jun Wudao's figure appeared first, wrapped in raging flames. The raging flames burned a lot of moisture in the air, making crackling sounds. At this moment, Jun Wudao was like a living creature in the flames. The void there was like a piece of iron, burning red. It was scary to look at. Bang! Tongues of flame suddenly burst out and soared into the sky. On the other side, Chu Yang also quickly appeared. His body was not wrapped in flames, but the spirit qi in his fist was surging like magma. It was as if his fist was the mouth of a volcano. Without any words, the two of them exchanged blows again. As soon as the two of them came into contact, a boom rang out. It was as if flames had erupted. A wave of flames shot up into the sky and raged through the 9 heavens. The flames splashed out in all directions and fell into the crowd like a small boat returning late at night, startling a group of gulls and herons. Everyone cried out in alarm as they fled in all directions. Chaos ensued. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Immediately, Chu Yang's and Jun Wudao's fists changed at the same time. Both of them were filled with great vitality fluctuations. As the spiritual energy surged, a green radiance shone out. Both of their fists seemed to be divine seeds that were about to sprout, break out of the ground, and grow into giant trees. They would become heavenly pillars that would support the heavens. What are the two of them doing? Their moves and spiritual energy are exactly the same. How can a battle of life and death be so straightforward? There's nothing else. Are the two of them fighting each other? Many people felt that something was wrong. The two former and current sect leaders of the Five Elements sect, as well as the Supreme Elder, Elder Gold, and the Elder of the Judiciary, had already seen it clearly. The two of them were deliberately trying to convince each other. They were competing in terms of strength and ruthlessness. Who was stronger in water? Who was stronger? 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 Rumble. Chapter 906. This time, at the center of the collision, a green light soared into the sky. A giant tree suddenly grew out of the center of the collision, reaching straight into the sky. Although it was only for a moment, everyone was fiercely shocked by this scene. The battle between these two had actually produced such a miraculous scene. At the same time, it made everyone almost suffocate. These two were simply too strong, too strong. It was not an exaggeration to say that the battle between these two would determine who was the strongest person in the Eastern Wilderness. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were the 5 most basic elements in the world. The 5 elements were also the most basic elements. Every martial artist would come into contact with them. The 5 elements were not rare, but the 5 elements were easy to understand but difficult to master. If one could comprehend the essence of the 5 elements, it would turn something rotten into something magical. Its power would be astonishing, and no one could resist it. But how difficult was it to comprehend the essence of the 5 elements? Among millions of people, perhaps only 2 or 3 could do it. Chu Yang and Jun Wudao, these two were obviously 2 of those 2 or 3. The battle between the 5 elements and the wood element had actually produced such a miraculous scene. I understand, these two are competing with the 5 elements. They have abandoned all their moves and are competing with the profound meaning of the five-element. Five-element sect, five-element sect, we are all disciples of five-element sect, and the five elements are the most basic and also the most profound meaning of our five-element sect. Whoever has the better understanding of the five elements will be the strongest, and that person will be the number one genius of five-element sect. These two should be going all out, clashing head-on. Each of their attacks is real, without the slightest bit of exaggeration. They are both holding a ruthless force, wanting to beat each other until they are convinced. In a life-and-death battle between martial artists, there were all kinds of tricks and combinations. How could it be like this? Each of their attacks was so direct, clashing head-on. Now, Chu Yang and Jun Wudao were like two people. One could lift 1,000 Jin cauldron, the other could lift 1,000 Jin cauldron. This was not a life-and-death battle at all, but they were showing off to each other. However, this kind of showing off was also the most dangerous kind of showing off. The fight between the two of them was now a contest of the most fundamental nature. It didn't look like much, but it was extremely dangerous. If one's understanding of the five elements was not as good as the others, they would immediately be seriously injured upon contact. They would suffer a crushing defeat, and there would be no turning back. At that moment, everyone from the five-element sect could see how dangerous the battle between the two was. They couldn't help but hold their breaths as they stared at the two people in the air without blinking. Perhaps in the next moment, the outcome of the battle between the two would be decided. Without any words, Chu Yang and Jun Wudao exchanged blows again. Their fists were covered in a yellow mist, but in the center of their fists, there seemed to be a black and yellow aura lingering. Their fists were extremely heavy at this moment. Their fists were like a mountain and a star. When the crowd looked over, they immediately felt a great weight and heaviness. It was as if their gazes had been distorted by this heaviness. In fact, their gazes had been crushed and broken. Rumble. Heaven and earth shook. The loud sound was like an avalanche, like a landslide, like a continuous thunderclap. Dazzling light burst out, and in the center of the light, a towering mountain appeared, as if it was real. It was as if the two of them had moved a mountain in front of the crowd. The magical scene appeared again. The fight between Chu Yang and Jun Wudao was getting more and more intense, and the sparks that flew out were getting more and more dazzling everyone's eyes. After the four elements of the five elements, water, fire, wood, and earth, it was just as people had expected. The next blow was a blow of metal. In the air, a platinum storm broke out, and a sharp whistling chi was raging. The spiritual chi of metal splashed in all directions like thousands of arrows. Sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, hooks, tridents, and 18 kinds of weapons appeared one by one. Chapter 907. You do have the right to be arrogant. In terms of the comprehension of the five elements, there is finally someone in the entire eastern wilderness who can compete with me. The two of them stopped for a while. Jun Wudao's eyes were like two divine lamps. His gaze was like fire, and his voice was like a knife, filled with killing intent. If you feel uncomfortable, then feel uncomfortable. What's there to hide? Chu Yang sneered. My comprehension of the five elements is not inferior to yours. You must be very shocked now. Hearing this, the people of the five elements sect were stunned. The reason why Jun Wudao was the divine son of the five elements was that his five martial spirits corresponded to the five elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Therefore, it could be said that the five elements were Jun Wudao's strongest point. But this strongest point couldn't do anything to Chu Yang. He even suddenly discovered that in the unparalleled path of the five elements, there was someone who was not inferior to him and could be on par with him. It was definitely not a good feeling. The five elements are Jun Wudao's pride. He must be feeling terrible now. The people of the five elements sect could not help but have such a thought. At this moment, Jun Wudao did not show any frustration on his face, but when he spoke just now, everything was clear without a doubt. Terrible? Jun Wudao did not admit it. His pale and sickly face suddenly turned cold, as if covered with a layer of frost, emitting rays of cold light. You think too much. That was just my basic means. I did not use my full strength. Rumble. As soon as Jun Wudao's voice fell, the spiritual qi in his body surged like waves. Endless five-colored light burst out from his body, instantly making his whole body bright and transparent. His internal organs could be seen clearly. Immediately, a divine lamp entered his heart, a green light entered his lungs, a yellow dragon entered his spleen, a halberd entered his lungs, and finally, what seemed to be a mountain-sized water droplet entered his kidneys. After that, his internal organs became even brighter, as if there were 5 gods in them, forming a cycle of the 5 elements. The 5-colored light became even more dazzling. At this moment, Chu Yang only felt that in the depths of Jun Wudao's 5 internal organs, there seemed to be many spatial coordinate points that communicated with the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and so on. Besides, when he breathed, he released the pure essence of the 5 elements, which made Jun Wudao's body even more powerful. Dong dong dong. Inside Jun Wudao's body, the sound of war drums was like thunder. As his pulse throbbed, it resonated with his heart, and the sound of rolling thunder erupted. His heart was like a heavenly drum, and his pulse was like angry thunder. The sound of the heavenly drum and raging thunder appeared on Jun Wudao's body at the same time, which meant that she had used the 5 elements ultimacy to the maximum. 5 viscera. What was that thing that entered his 5 viscera? Chu Yang felt that Jun Wudao's 5 elements qi had suddenly risen by a level. His eyes narrowed slightly, but the exclamation of the crowd immediately let him know the answer. The heaven and earth lamp, sharp golden halberd, first yuan heavy water, phoenix wood, yellow dragon sand, and the divine sun's 5 martial spirits have entered his 5 viscera. His 5 viscera are like gods. 5 viscera, who can be a match for the divine sun? That's right. If the divine sun had used this method, he could have killed Chu Yang with 1 punch. How could he have let him withstand 5 punches? The supporters of the 5 elements divine sun clamored and shouted arrogantly. Their voices were completely on Jun Wudao's side, suppressing Chu Yang's mind. Gaga. Suddenly, there was a strange laughter that suddenly stopped everything. When everyone looked over, they saw that it was the featherless parrot. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.